My daughter-in-law secretly sold the only thing I had left of my late wife to fund a luxury vacation to Dubai. When I walked into my garage and found the space empty, I felt my heart stop. I was ready to call the police. I was ready to tear the house down. But then my phone rang. It was the owner of the dealership she sold it to. He said, "Clyde, you need to get down here right now." She did not just sell the car. She sold what was hidden inside the chassis. And that mistake is going to cost her freedom. If you are listening to this, hit that like button and subscribe, because I am about to tell you how I taught a greedy woman that you never steal from a man who used to build submarines for the Navy. I had been gone for 2 days. 2 days. That was all it took for my life to be turned upside down. I had driven up to Lake Michigan for a solo fishing trip, something I do when the noise of the house gets too loud. I needed the silence. I needed to think about Beatrice. It would have been our 45th anniversary this week. When I pulled my old Ford pickup into the driveway, the sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across the lawn. The house looked peaceful, deceptively peaceful. I did not go inside the house first. I never do. I went straight to the detached garage. It is my sanctuary. It is where I keep her. Beatrice. Not my wife, but the 1967 Shelby GT 500 that my wife bought me for our 10th anniversary. Black paint, white racing stripes, a V8 engine that roared like a lion. My wife passed away 5 years ago, sitting in the passenger seat of that car. It was a peaceful heart attack. She just went to sleep while I was driving us to Sunday service. That car was not just metal and rubber to me, it was a mausoleum. It was the last place I held her hand. I pressed the button on the garage door opener. The chain rattled. The door began to lift. I expected to see the glint of the chrome bumper. I expected to smell the mix of high-octane fuel and vintage leather. The door went up, and I stared into the void. Empty. My stomach dropped so hard I felt bile rise in my throat. I blinked, thinking maybe I was having a stroke. Maybe I was old and confused. But no. The concrete floor was bare except for a single oil stain near the center. The tool chest was closed. The car cover was folded neatly in the corner. My first thought was theft. Someone had watched me leave for the lake. They knew what was in there. That car was worth $250,000 easily. I reached for my phone to dial 911, my fingers trembling with rage. Then I saw it. A piece of neon pink sticky notepaper stuck to the workbench. It was my daughter-in-law's handwriting. Loopy. Childish. It read, "Don't worry, Dad. I finally cleared out that old junk for you. Now we have space for storage." Junk. She called a Shelby GT 500 junk. I did not call the police. Not yet. I gripped the note in my fist, crushing it. I walked out of the garage and marched toward the house. The front door was unlocked. I stepped into the living room and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The air conditioning was blasting, but the heat coming off me could have melted the paint on the walls. Tiffany was sprawled out on the beige sectional sofa. She was wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than my first car. She had a glass of white wine in one hand and her phone in the other. She was scrolling through Instagram, her thumb flicking up and down, up and down. My son Jamal was sitting in the armchair across from her. He was staring at the floor, his shoulders hunched. He looked like a man waiting for the executioner. When I slammed the front door, he jumped. Tiffany did not even look up. "Where is it?" I asked. My voice was low. It was the voice I used to use when I was a foreman at the shipyard correcting a welder who was about to blow us all up. Tiffany took a sip of her wine. She acted bored. "Where is what, Clyde?" "My car." "Oh, that." She finally looked at me. Her eyes were blue and cold, devoid of any real empathy. "I told you in the note. I got rid of it. You are welcome, by the way. That thing was a death trap. No airbags, no safety features. And you are 71 years old. Your eyesight is terrible. I did you a favor." I looked at Jamal. He refused to meet my gaze. "You sold it," I said. It was not a question. "I did," Tiffany said, sitting up and crossing her legs. "I found a buyer who specializes in scrap metal and old parts." Scrap metal. I felt my blood pressure spiking. "That car is a collector's item, Tiffany. Who did you sell it to? And where is the money?" She smirked. She reached into her robe pocket and pulled out a bank deposit slip. She waved it in the air like a flag. $80,000, Clyde. Can you believe it? Some idiot actually paid 80 grand for that rust bucket. The money is already pending in our joint account. 80,000. She had sold a car worth 3 times that amount for $80,000. She had practically given it away. I walked over and snatched the slip from her hand. I looked at the date. Yesterday. "That was my car, Tiffany," I said, my voice shaking. "My name is on the title. You cannot sell it. That is Grand Theft Auto." She laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Oh, please, don't be dramatic. I found the title in that little safe in your closet. You really should change the combination. 1, 2, 3, 4 is not very secure. And since you and Jamal share a last name, I just signed for you. Nobody looks that closely at the signature of a senile old man." I looked at Jamal again. "Son," I said, "you let her do this. You let her break into my safe. You let her sell your mother's car." Jamal finally looked up. His eyes were wet. "Dad, listen. Tiffany needs this. We need this. Need what I asked." "A rebrand," Tiffany interrupted. She stood up and walked over to the kitchen counter, picking up a glossy brochure. "Look, we booked flights to Dubai. First class. We leave tomorrow night. I am going to launch my lifestyle brand there. Do you know how much engagement influencers get in Dubai? This 80,000 is the seed money. We are going to turn it into millions." I stared at her. She was delusional. She had never worked a real job in her life. She spent her days taking photos of her food and buying clothes she could not afford. And now she had liquidated my most precious possession to fund a vacation. "You forged my signature," I said. "You stole my property, and you are going to spend the money on a trip. It is an investment," she snapped. "And stop calling it stealing. We are family. Everything you have is going to be Jamal's eventually anyway. We are just advancing the inheritance. Besides, look at you. You live in the basement half the time. You wear work boots and flannel shirts. You don't need a muscle car. You need a rocking chair." She walked past me, the scent of expensive perfume filling the air. "By the way," she said over her shoulder, "since the garage is empty, I ordered some new luggage. It is arriving tomorrow. Do not park your truck in there." She went upstairs, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I stood there with Jamal. He looked miserable. "Dad," he whispered. I tried to stop her, but she said if I did not support her dream, she would leave me. She said I was holding her back. "You are a grown man, Jamal," I said. "You are 32 years old, and you let your wife commit a felony because you are afraid of sleeping alone." He put his head in his hands. "It is done, Dad. The car is gone. The money is pending. Just let it go. Please. For me. If you call the police, they will arrest her. Do you want your daughter-in-law in prison?" I looked at my son. I saw the fear in him. I saw the weakness. I realized then that I had failed him. I had protected him too much. I had hidden my success, my money, and my power because I wanted him to be humble. Instead, I made him soft. I did not say another word. I turned around and walked out the front door. I got in my truck and drove. I did not know where I was going. I just needed air. I drove to the park down the street and sat on a bench watching the ducks float on the pond. I felt old. I felt tired. I thought about the car. I thought about the glove box where I kept Beatrice's favorite sunglasses. I thought about the smell of her perfume that still lingered on the upholstery. Tiffany had sold my memories for a plane ticket. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over the emergency dialer. I could call the cops. I could report the car stolen. I could have Tiffany arrested at the airport. It would be easy. But then I thought about Jamal. If I arrested his wife, I would lose him forever. He was weak, yes, but he was my son. I sat there for an hour, the sun dipping below the horizon. I was about to give up. I was about to accept that the car was gone and that I would have to find another way to deal with Tiffany. Then my phone rang. The caller ID said, "Sal's Luxury Auto." Sal was an old friend. We served in the Navy together 40 years ago. He ran the biggest high-end dealership in the state. He was the only mechanic I trusted to touch the Shelby besides myself. I answered. "Hello, Sal." Clyde Sal's voice was urgent. "Where are you?" "I am at the park." "Why?" "Listen to me, Clyde. A woman came in here yesterday. Blonde. Lots of makeup. Attitude problem. She brought in a '67 Shelby, black with white stripes. My heart hammered against my ribs. That is my car, Sal. She stole it." "I knew it," Sal said. "I knew it the second I saw the registration. The signature looked shaky. And she was selling it for 80 grand, Clyde. 80. I knew that car was yours. I recognized the VIN number. Did you buy it? I asked. I had to. Sal said, if I didn't, she would have taken it to some chop shop or sold it to a stranger on Craigslist. I wrote her a check just to get the keys out of her hand, but I haven't cashed it on my end yet. I put a hold on the transfer. Thank God I breathed. Sal, keep the car. Do not let her have it back. I am coming to get it. Wait, Clyde. There is something else. What? You need to come here. Now. When I was detailing the car, checking the condition, I lifted the carpet in the trunk to check the spare tire well. I froze. You looked in the trunk, I whispered. Yes, Sal said. And Clyde? I found the folder. The silence on the line was heavy. She did not know, did she? Sal asked. She had no idea what she was driving around. No, I said. She thinks it is just a car. You need to get down here, Sal said. We need to talk about what is in that folder, and we need to talk about what you are going to do. Because once she realizes that money isn't clearing, she is going to come back here screaming. I will be there in 20 minutes, I said. I hung up the phone. A cold calm settled over me. The sadness was gone. The tiredness was gone. In its place was the cold, hard steel of a man who used to negotiate contracts with admirals and generals. Tiffany wanted a war. She wanted to play the big shot. She wanted to treat me like a senile old man who didn't know the value of $1. Well, she was about to find out exactly how much I was worth. I started the truck. I did not drive home. I drove straight to Sal's dealership. When I arrived, the dealership was closed to the public, but the lights in the showroom were still on. I banged on the glass door. Sal came running. He unlocked it and let me in. He led me to the back to the VIP garage where they kept the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis. And there she was, Beatrice, shining under the fluorescent lights. She looked untouched. Sal was standing next to the trunk. It was open. In his hand he held a thick yellow manila envelope. The seal had been broken. I opened it to make sure it was what I thought it was, Sal said apologetically. It is okay, Sal. He handed me the envelope. I held it in my hands. It was heavy. Inside that envelope were bearer bonds, old ones, bought in the 80s, along with the deed to a commercial property downtown that I had purchased under a shell company in 1990, and a patent agreement for a hydraulic valve system I designed for the Navy. Tiffany thought she sold a car for $80,000. She had actually handed over the keys to a fortune worth more than $2 million, and she had no clue. Sal looked at me. So, Clyde, what is the plan? You want me to call the cops? We have her on fraud. We have her on theft. We have her on forgery. I looked at the car. I looked at the envelope. I thought about the trip to Dubai. I thought about the rebrand. I thought about the way she looked at me when she said I needed a rocking chair. No police, I said. Not yet. Sal frowned. Why not? Because I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. She thinks that money is pending. She thinks she is about to be a queen in Dubai. She thinks she has won. I looked at Sal. Let the transfer show as pending for 48 hours. Let them get on that plane. Let them land in Dubai. Let them check into the hotel. And then Sal asked, and then I said cancel the check. Report the transaction as fraudulent due to a signature mismatch. Sal started to smile. You are going to strand them in Dubai. I am going to do more than that, I said. I am going to teach them a lesson about finance. I took the envelope and tucked it into my jacket. I drove home. When I walked in, the house was quiet. They were asleep. I went downstairs to the basement just like Tiffany suggested. But I did not go to sleep. I opened my laptop. I logged into my main accounts. The accounts they didn't know existed. I saw the activity on my credit report. Tiffany, she had opened 3 credit cards in my name using my social security number, which she must have found in the safe. She had maxed them out buying luggage and clothes for the trip. She was not just selling my car, she was stealing my identity. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, Mr. Goldstein. It was midnight, but he answered. He always answers for me. Clyde, is everything all right? No, Saul, we have a situation. I need you to prepare a document, a revocation of deed, for the house, Saul asked. Yes. I put the house in Jamal's name last year, but we kept the clause that said if he or his spouse committed a crime against me, the deed reverts. I remember Saul said, Do you want to execute it? Prepare it, I said. And Saul, contact the credit bureaus. Flag my social security number for fraud. Tonight. Tonight. I hung up. I sat in the dark basement. I listened to the furnace hum. Tomorrow morning they would leave for the airport. They would think they were flying toward a new life of luxury. They had no idea they were flying into a hurricane. The next morning I woke up to the sound of suitcases thumping down the stairs. I came up to the kitchen. Tiffany was wearing a white linen suit and oversized sunglasses. She looked like she was ready for a photo shoot. Jamal was struggling with 4 massive Louis Vuitton suitcases. Brand new. "Morning, Dad," Jamal mumbled. "Goodbye," Clyde Tiffany said. "We will send you a postcard." "Don't wait up." I stood in the doorway of the kitchen holding my mug of black coffee. "Have a safe flight," I said. "Make sure you check your balances before you spend too much." Tiffany laughed. "Oh, don't worry. We have plenty. 80,000 goes a long way." She grabbed Jamal's arm. "Come on, babe. The Uber Black is here." They walked out the door. They didn't look back. I watched them get into the black SUV. I watched them drive away. I took a sip of my coffee. "Enjoy the flight," I whispered. "Because when you land, the real show begins." I waited 1 hour. Then I went to the garage. I cleaned the oil stain off the floor. I reorganized my tools. I made space. Then I called Sal. "Bring her home, Sal." 20 minutes later, a flatbed truck pulled up. My Shelby was on the back. They lowered her down gently. I parked her in her spot. I wiped a smudge of dust off the fender. I sat in the driver's seat. I put my hands on the steering wheel. I closed my eyes. "I am sorry, Beatrice," I whispered. "I let them touch you. It won't happen again." Then I went upstairs to their bedroom. I needed to see the damage. The room was a disaster. Clothes everywhere, boxes from luxury stores, and on the bedside table a notebook. Tiffany's business plan. I opened it. Step 1, sell the car. Step 2, Dubai content trip. Step 3, return and put Clyde in a home. Step 4, sell the house. I stared at the words. Put Clyde in a home. She didn't just want my money. She wanted to erase me. I closed the notebook. I put it in my pocket. My phone buzzed. It was an alert from my bank. Suspicious activity detected. She was trying to use the joint account debit card at the airport duty-free. I opened the banking app. I had left $2,000 in that account for household expenses. I transferred it all out. Balance 0. I smiled. The game was on. 24 hours later, I got the first text. "Dad, the card isn't working. We are at the hotel in Dubai and they need a deposit. Can you call the bank?" I did not reply. 10 minutes later. "Clyde, pick up the phone. We are stuck in the lobby. The check hasn't cleared yet and the cards are declining." I poured myself a glass of iced tea. I turned on the TV. I watched a documentary about lions hunting gazelles. An hour later, my phone rang. It was Jamal. "Dad, please. We are in Dubai. The hotel is threatening to call the police if we don't put a card down. The 80,000 isn't showing up. It says transaction canceled." I answered the phone. "Hello, son." "Dad." "Thank God. Something is wrong with the bank. The money from the car, it's gone, and the credit cards aren't working." "That is strange," I said. "Dad, you have to help us. Transfer us some money, just until we sort this out." "I can't do that, Jamal." "Why not?" "Because," I said, my voice calm and steady, "I am just a poor old man living in a basement. I don't have any money. Remember." "Dad, stop joking. We are in trouble." "You are not in trouble, son," I said. "You are in a consequence." "What are you talking about?" "I know you sold the car, Jamal. I know you forged my signature. And I know about the plan to put me in a home." There was silence on the line. Then I heard Tiffany screaming in the background. "Give me the phone, Clyde. You listen to me. You fix this right now, or I swear to God." "You will do what, Tiffany?" I asked. "You are 7,000 miles away with no money, no place to stay, and a bounced check." "I did not bounce the check." "You did something, I did nothing, I lied. The dealership owner realized you sold a stolen car. He canceled the payment. He has the car, and he has the police report ready to file." "Police report?" "Yes. Grand theft, forgery, identity theft." She went quiet. "Now," I said, "you have a choice. You can stay in Dubai and explain to the local police why you can't pay your bill. I hear the jails there are very strict about debt. Or you can figure out a way home. But we don't have tickets. We bought one way." That sounds like a planning error, I said. Dad. Jamal was crying now. Dad, please, help us. I looked at the photo of Beatrice on the mantelpiece. I will make you a deal, I said. Anything, Dad. Anything. I will buy you 2 economy tickets home, but when you land, you are not coming back to this house. What Jamal asked. The locks are being changed today, I said. The deed has reverted to my name. My lawyer executed the clause this morning. You are homeless, Jamal. No. Dad, you can't. I can. And I did. I will send the e-tickets to your email. You have 3 hours to get to the airport. If you miss the flight, you are on your own. I hung up the phone. I sat there in the silence of my house, my real house. I felt a pang of sadness for Jamal. He was my son. But sometimes you have to let the bird fall out of the nest so it learns that gravity is real. I authorized the purchase of 2 economy tickets, middle seats, back row, near the toilets. Then I called Mr. Goldstein. It is done, I said. Good, he said. And the police report. Hold off on it, I said. Let's see how they behave when they land. I spent the next 14 hours cleaning the house. I boxed up all of Tiffany's clothes. I put them in the driveway. I put a free sign on them. I watched the neighbors pick through her designer jackets. It was satisfying. When they landed at JFK, I was not there to greet them. I was sitting on my porch polishing the chrome on the Shelby. A taxi pulled up. They got out. They looked wrecked. No makeup, wrinkled clothes. Jamal looked like he had aged 10 years. They walked up the driveway. They saw the empty boxes where Tiffany's clothes used to be. Where is my stuff? Tiffany shrieked. Her voice was hoarse. Gone, I said. I donated it. You had no right, I had every right. You abandoned it when you fled the country with stolen money. She lunged at me. Jamal grabbed her. Stop it, Tiff. Stop it. She fought him. You old miserable. I stood up. I wiped the rag on my hands. You have 5 minutes to get off my property, I said. Or I called Detective Miller. He is waiting for my call. Tiffany froze. Jamal looked at me. Dad, where are we supposed to go? I don't know, son, but you are a smart guy. You will figure it out. Maybe you can stay with one of your friends? Or maybe you can get a job. Job, Tiffany spat. Yes, a job. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a card. This is the number for a staffing agency, I said. They are looking for manual labor. It pays $15 an hour. It is honest work. I threw the card on the ground at Jamal's feet. He looked at it. He looked at me. I am sorry, Dad, he whispered. I know I said. But sorry does not put gas in the tank. I turned my back on them and walked into the garage. I hit the button. The door lowered slowly. I watched their feet disappear as the door closed. I was alone. But for the first time in years, I felt safe. I walked over to the Shelby. I patted the roof. We are okay, Beatrice, I said. We are okay. Later that night, I got a text from Sal. Did they land? Yes, I replied. Lesson delivered. You are a hard man, Clyde. I am a father, I wrote back. Sometimes being a father means being the villain so your kid can learn to be a hero. I never pressed charges. I let the fear of prison hang over Tiffany's head. They divorced 6 months later. Jamal got a job at a warehouse. He is working his way up. We have Sunday dinner once a month. He pays for the pizza. He is learning. As for the fortune in the trunk, it is still there, waiting. Maybe one day when Jamal is ready, I will show him what real wealth looks like. Until then, I am just a poor old man with a nice car. And that is just the way I like it. I stood there in the middle of the living room and I could feel the blood pumping in my ears like a piston in an engine that is running too hot. My hands were at my sides, but they were curled into fists so tight my knuckles were aching. I looked at the deposit slip in my hand again. $80,000. It was a lot of money to a fool. It was a lot of money to my son. But to me, it was an insult. It was a spit in the face. I took a breath. I had to be calm. I learned a long time ago that when you are dealing with a volatile situation, you do not add fire to it. You control the pressure. You bleed the valve. I looked at Tiffany. She was still sitting on that sofa like she was the Queen of Sheba, looking at her nails like the most interesting thing in the world was the fresh coat of red paint on them. How did you do it? I asked. My voice was low. It was steady. It did not shake. She looked up at me and blinked like she did not understand the question. Do what, Clyde? The title, I said. The title to the Shelby. It was in my safe. That safe is bolted to the floor of my closet. It has a combination lock. I know for a fact I did not leave it open. Tiffany let out a little laugh. It was a high, scratchy sound that grated on my nerves. Oh, that. You really are getting forgetful in your old age, Clyde. You left it wide open. The door was just swinging there. I just reached in and grabbed the folder. I knew she was lying. I have been a mechanic and an engineer for 50 years. I am a man of routine. I lock my doors, I check my valves, I secure my perimeter. I never leave that safe open. She had pried it. Or maybe she guessed the combination. It was Beatrice's birthday. Maybe I was the fool for using a date that meant something to me. But the signature, I said. The car is in my name. Clyde Washington. Not Jamal Washington. Not Tiffany. Me. She shrugged her shoulders. The silk robe slipped a little. She did not care. We have the same last name, Dad, she said. Washington is Washington. I just scribbled something that looked like your writing. The guy at the dealership did not care. He saw a young, pretty woman selling a car and he just wanted to close the deal. Besides, who is going to check? You are my father-in-law. We are family. It is not like you are going to sue us. I looked at my son. Jamal was still sitting in that armchair. He looked small. He looked like a boy who had broken a window and was waiting for the belt. But he was not a boy. He was 32 years old. He had a beard, he had a job, he had a wife, and he was letting this happen. Jamal, I said, you know that is a felony. That is forgery. That is fraud. Jamal finally looked up at me. He shifted in his seat. He looked at Tiffany, then he looked at me. Dad, come on, he said. His voice was whining. It sounded weak. Don't use words like felony. That is too harsh. Tiffany needs this. We need this. You don't understand how hard it is out there right now. Hard, I asked. You have a roof over your head that I paid for. You have food in your fridge that I bought. You drive a car that I put the down payment on. Tell me, son, what is so hard? The pressure, Dad, Jamal said. The pressure to be someone. Tiffany has a real shot here. She has followers. Real followers. People listen to her, but she needs content. She needs to look the part. Dubai is the place to be. If she goes there and takes the right photos and meets the right people, she could blow up. She could be a star. I stared at him. I tried to find the son I raised. I tried to find the boy who used to hand me wrenches in the garage on Saturday mornings. The boy who cried when his goldfish died. Where was he? Who was this man sitting in front of me justifying theft because his wife wanted to be famous on the internet? So you sold my car, I said. You sold your mother's car. It is just a car, Dad, Jamal said. And that was the sentence that broke something inside of me. It is just metal. It is old iron and rubber. I know you loved Mom. I know you miss her. But holding on to that car isn't bringing her back. It is just sitting in the garage gathering dust. It is selfish to keep $80,000 sitting on 4 tires when that money could change our lives. It is an investment, Dad. Think of it as investing in the future of your family. Think of it as investing in your future grandchildren. I felt a coldness spread through my chest. It started in my heart and moved out to my limbs. It was the coldness of realization. I realized then that my son was gone. He was not just weak. He was not just being manipulated. He was one of them. He had drunk the poison. He believed that appearance was more important than substance. He believed that stealing was okay if you called it an investment. He called my Shelby just metal. He did not know. He could not know. I looked at Tiffany. She was smiling now. She thought she had won. She thought Jamal standing up to me meant that I was defeated. Exactly, Clyde, she said. See, even Jamal agrees. It is for the best. And honestly, you should be thanking me. That car was dangerous. No airbags, no sensors. You are 71. Your reflexes aren't what they used to be. I did you a favor taking that death trap away. She stood up and walked over to the kitchen island. She picked up her phone and started typing. Besides, she said without looking up, the money is already moved. I transferred it from the pending status into our joint savings. It is done. So there is no use crying about it. You need to stop being so dramatic and start being practical. Practical, I said. Yes, practical, Tiffany said. She put the phone down and looked at me with eyes that were hard as diamonds. Since we are making changes, we need to talk about the living arrangements. I stood very still. What about them? Well, she said, gesturing around the living room. This is a big house, 4 bedrooms, and you are just one old man. You rattle around in here. And honestly, having you on the main floor is a little cramping for our style. She paused for effect. She wanted to see me flinch. I did not flinch. When we get back from Dubai, I am going to need this space, she said. I am going to have a lot of new inventory. Clothes, bags, shoes. I need to turn the master bedroom into a closet and a filming studio. Jamal and I need the privacy. She pointed a manicured finger toward the door that led to the basement. We cleared out the storage room downstairs, she said. It is dry. It is warm enough. We put a cot down there for you. It will be cozy, like a little apartment. You can have your own space, and we can have ours. It is better this way. You won't be in the way when I am filming content. And you won't have to listen to us moving around up here. I looked at Jamal. He was studying the pattern on the rug. He knew this was wrong. He knew it was evil. But he said nothing. His silence was louder than her words. So that is it, I said. You steal my car. You steal my money. And now you are evicting me from my own bedroom, in my own house. It is not your house anymore, Dad, Jamal muttered. You put it in my name last year. Remember, for tax purposes. I remembered. I remembered wanting to make sure he was secure. I remembered wanting to give him a head start. I thought I was being a good father. I thought I was building a legacy. I was digging my own grave. I looked at them, the influencer and the coward. They thought they held all the cards. They thought I was just a retired mechanic living on a pension. They saw grease under my fingernails and flannel on my back, and they saw poverty. They saw weakness. They did not know who I really was. They did not know about the years I spent in the naval shipyards. They did not know about the clearance levels I held. They did not know about the nights I spent hunched over blueprints designing hydraulic systems for nuclear submarines. They did not know about the patent, System for High-Pressure Hydraulic Fluid Regulation in Submerged Vessels. That was the official name. It was a small valve, a tiny piece of metal. But it changed the way submarines handled deep dives. It was used in every naval fleet in the Western world. And every time one was manufactured, I got paid. I have accounts they have never seen. I have investments managed by firms they have never heard of. That $80,000 they were so excited about, that was pocket change. That was what I made in interest in a bad quarter. I could buy their dream trip to Dubai 100 times over and not even notice the dip in my balance. I kept it secret because I wanted them to be normal. I wanted them to work. I wanted them to have character. But looking at them now, I realize that character is not something you can gift. And it is not something you can teach to people who do not want to learn. I took a deep breath. The anger was still there, but it had changed. It was no longer hot and explosive. It was cold. It was calculating. It was the kind of focus you need when you are disarming a live torpedo. You are right, I said. Tiffany blinked. She looked surprised. I am. Yes, I said. I am an old man. I don't need a fast car. And maybe the basement is better. It is quieter down there. I saw the relief wash over Jamal's face. He let out a breath he had been holding. Thanks, Dad. I knew you would understand. It is just temporary, just until we get settled. Sure, son, I said. Just temporary. Tiffany clapped her hands together. Great. That is settled then. Now, if you will excuse us, we have packing to do. Our flight is tomorrow morning and I have nothing to wear. She turned her back on me. She dismissed me like I was the help. I turned around and walked toward the basement door. I did not slam it. I opened it quietly and stepped into the dark. I walked down the wooden stairs. They creaked under my weight. The air down there was cool and smelled of damp concrete. I saw the cot they had set up. It was an old camping cot with a thin mattress. They had thrown one of my old quilts on it. It looked like a prison cell. I sat down on the cot. The springs groaned. They thought they had won. They thought they had stripped me of everything, my car, my dignity, my home, but they had made a mistake, a critical error. They left me alone, and they left me with my mind. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I looked at the screen. I had a missed call from Sal and a text message. Clyde, you need to see this. I found something else in the car. Call me. I did not call him back immediately. I sat there in the dark and I let the plan form in my mind. It came together like a complex engine assembly, piece by piece, bolt by bolt. They wanted to go to Dubai. They wanted to live the high life. They wanted to spend my money. I would let them. I would let them fly high, higher than they had ever flown before. Because the higher you fly, the longer you have to fall. And when they hit the ground, I was going to be the one waiting to pick up the pieces, not to put them back together, but to sweep them away. I laid back on the cot and stared at the exposed floor joists above my head. I could hear their footsteps upstairs, heavy, entitled. They were walking all over me. "Enjoy it while it lasts," I whispered to the darkness. "Enjoy the floor, because pretty soon the ground is going to fall out from under you. And Beatrice, my love," I thought, "don't you worry, your car is coming home, and so is justice." I closed my eyes, and for the first time in 2 days, I slept. I slept the sleep of a man who knows exactly what he is going to do tomorrow. I walked out of that house and the door clicked shut behind me with a sound that felt like a gavel coming down in a courtroom. It was a final sound. A sound that said the life I had known inside those walls was over. I climbed into my old Ford truck. The suspension creaked under my weight. It was a good truck, loyal. It did what it was told, and it never asked for anything but a little oil and gas, unlike the people I had just left behind. I did not turn the key right away. I sat there in the driveway, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned the color of ash. I looked at the garage door. The empty space behind it felt like a missing tooth, a phantom limb, my Shelby, my Beatrice, gone. Sold for pennies on the dollar by a woman who saw her as nothing more than a ticket to a 5-star hotel. I started the engine. It rumbled to life, a low, steady growl that vibrated through the seat. I backed out of the driveway, and I did not look back at the house. I could not bear to see the windows where my son was likely comforting his wife, telling her that everything would be fine, that the old man would get over it. I drove aimlessly for a while. The city streets were blurring past me. I saw people walking their dogs. I saw kids riding bikes. I saw life going on as if my world had not just been gutted. I ended up at Washington Park. It is an old park with big oak trees that have been standing since before I was born. Beatrice and I used to come here. We would sit by the pond and watch the swans. She used to say that swans were the only creatures that truly knew how to love because they mated for life. I wondered what she would think of her son now. I wondered if she would be ashamed. I parked the truck and walked over to a wooden bench facing the water. The wood was rough against my back. The sun was going down, casting long shadows across the grass. It was getting cold, but I did not feel it. The cold inside me was deeper than the air. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. It felt heavy in my hand like a loaded weapon. I unlocked the screen and opened the keypad. I typed in 3 numbers, 911. My thumb hovered over the call button. It would be so easy. All I had to do was press that green circle. I would tell the operator that my vehicle had been stolen. I would give them the VIN number. I would tell them who took it. Within an hour, the police would be at my door. They would put cuffs on Tiffany. They would probably put cuffs on Jamal too as an accomplice. I closed my eyes and I imagined it. I imagined the blue lights flashing in the driveway. I imagined the neighbors coming out to watch. I imagined Jamal being shoved into the back of a squad car, his head ducked low in shame. I wanted it. God help me, I wanted it. I wanted them to feel the fear I felt when I opened that garage door. I wanted them to know that actions have consequences. But then I saw Jamal's face in my mind, not the man sitting in the armchair making excuses, but the boy who fell off his bike and scraped his knee and tried not to cry because he wanted to be tough like his daddy. The boy who made me a card out of construction paper for Father's Day that said, "You are my hero." If I made that call, I would destroy him. He would have a felony record. He would lose his job. He would never be able to get a security clearance. He would be ruined. I was a father. And a father protects his children even when they do not deserve it, even when they hold the knife that cuts you. I lowered the phone. I deleted the numbers. I let out a breath that sounded like a tire losing air. I could not do it. I could not send my own son to prison. I sat there for a long time watching the light fade from the sky. I felt like an old fool, a weak old man who let his family walk all over him because he was too soft to fight back. Maybe Tiffany was right. Maybe I did need a rocking chair. Maybe I should just go quietly into the night and let them pick the meat off my bones. Then my phone rang. The sound was loud in the quiet park. It startled a duck near the water's edge. I looked at the screen. Sal's luxury auto. Sal, Salvatore Moretti. We served on the USS Enterprise together back in the 70s. He was a mechanic in the motor pool and I was in engineering. We bonded over the smell of diesel and the noise of the turbines. When we got out, I went into defense contracting and he opened a used car lot. Now, 40 years later, he owned the biggest luxury dealership in the state. He was the only man I let work on the Shelby. He knew every bolt in that car. He knew what it meant to me. I swiped the answer button. "Hello, Sal." My voice sounded gravelly and old. "Clyde." Sal's voice was tight. Urgent. "Where are you right now?" "I am at the park. Washington Park." "Why?" "You need to get down here, Clyde. To the dealership. Right now." I sighed. "I am not in the mood for a visit, Sal. I am having a bad day." "Listen to me, Clyde. This is not a social call. A woman came in here yesterday. Blonde. Flashy. Carrying a Birkin bag that looked fake. She sold me a car. I went rigid. My hand gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. What kind of car, Sal? You know what kind of car, Clyde. A 1967 Shelby GT 500. Black on black. White racing stripes. Mint condition." I closed my eyes. The pain washed over me again, fresh and sharp. "She sold it to you," I whispered. "She did," Sal said. "She walked in here acting like she owned the place. Said she wanted to liquidate an asset for her father-in-law who was moving into assisted living. Said he could not drive anymore." Assisted living. The lie burned in my gut. "Did you buy it, Sal?" "I had to, Clyde." Sal's voice dropped lower. She was asking $80,000. 80. "You and I both know that car is worth $250,000 on a bad day. If I didn't buy it, she would have gone down the street to those sharks at CarMax, or worse, she would have put it on Craigslist and some kid would have wrapped it around a telephone pole by sunset." I had to get the keys out of her hand. "You have it," I asked. "You have Beatrice." "I have her," Sal said. "She is safe. She is in the back. In the VIP bay. Nobody touches her but me." Thank God, I breathed. "Thank you, Sal. I will write you a check. I will buy it back. Whatever you paid plus your trouble. We can figure that out later," Sal said. "That is not why I am calling you, Clyde. There is something else." "What?" "When I was processing the intake, I have to check everything, you know that. I have to check the VIN, the chassis, the engine block numbers. I was going through the car making sure everything was legitimate. And she is stupid, Clyde. She is so incredibly stupid. She was so busy trying to get that check and get out the door, she didn't check the car. She didn't clean it out." "What do you mean?" "You need to come see this yourself," Sal said. "I am looking at it right now. It was in the trunk, under the carpet, in the spare tire well." My heart stopped. The trunk. I had forgotten. In the chaos of the last few years after Beatrice died, I had moved things around. I had hidden things. I had put things in places where I thought they would be safe. Safe from prying eyes. Safe from a son who didn't know the value of $1. "I forgot I put it there," I whispered. "Well, it is still there," Sal said. "And Clyde, the seal is broken on the envelope, but the contents look untouched. I don't think she saw it. I think she just threw the spare tire jack on top of it and never looked twice." I stood up. My knees popped. The energy was coming back to me, surging through my veins like high-octane fuel. "I am coming, Sal. Do not let anyone near that car. Lock the doors. Turn off the lights. I will be there in 20 minutes. I hung up the phone and ran to my truck. I didn't feel old anymore. I felt dangerous. I drove through the city like I was qualifying for NASCAR. I wove through traffic, running yellow lights, pushing the old Ford as hard as she would go. My mind was racing faster than the engine. The trunk, the envelope. If Tiffany had found that, if she had opened it, she wouldn't have sold the car for $80,000. She would have sold it for millions. Or worse, she would have taken what was inside and disappeared to a country with no extradition treaty. She would have burned my life to the ground and toasted marshmallows on the flames. But she didn't know. Her greed had made her blind. She saw a car, and she saw a plane ticket. She didn't see the vault. I pulled into the lot of Sal's luxury auto. It was a massive glass and steel structure filled with cars that cost more than most houses. Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, Aston Martins. They gleamed under the streetlights like jewels. The main showroom was dark, but there was a light on in the service bay around the back. I drove around and saw Sal standing by the roll-up door. He looked worried. He was smoking a cigar, pacing back and forth. When he saw my truck, he threw the cigar on the ground and stomped it out. He opened the door and waved me in. I pulled the truck inside and killed the engine. The silence of the garage descended on us. It smelled of oil and rubber and money. Sal walked over and shook my hand. He gripped it hard. He was a short man, barrel-chested with hands like catcher's mitts. He looked me in the eye. "You look like hell, Clyde. I feel like hell, Sal." He nodded. "Come on, she is back here." He led me through the rows of cars, past a red Ferrari that was up on a lift past a vintage Jaguar that was being restored. We walked to the very back of the shop to a private bay that was enclosed in glass. It was climate-controlled, dust-free. Sal punched a code into the keypad on the wall. The glass door slid open with a soft hiss. And there she was. Beatrice. My Shelby. She sat in the center of the room under the bright LED lights looking like a predator waiting to pounce. The black paint was deep and flawless like a pool of oil. The white stripes were sharp. The chrome bumpers acted like mirrors reflecting my tired old face back at me. I walked up to her and ran my hand along the fender. The metal was cool and smooth. I felt a lump form in my throat. I remembered the day Beatrice gave her to me. She had blindfolded me and led me to the driveway. When she took the blindfold off, she said, "Happy anniversary, old man. Now you have something fast enough to keep up with me." I missed her so much it hurt to breathe. "She is okay," Sal said softly, standing behind me. I checked the fluids. I checked the pressure. She drove it hard getting here, I can tell by the brake dust, but she didn't damage anything. "The engine is purring." "Thank you, Sal," I said. My voice was thick. "Don't thank me yet," Sal said. "Come look at this." He walked to the back of the car and popped the trunk. The lid rose slowly on its hydraulics. The trunk was clean. The carpet lining was pristine. Sal reached in and lifted the false floor that covered the spare tire well. There, nestled next to the spare tire, was a thick yellow manila envelope. It was old. The edges were frayed. It had been sealed with red wax stamped with my signet ring, but the wax was cracked. I reached in and picked it up. It felt heavy in my hands. Heavier than paper should feel. It felt like history. It felt like power. I opened the flap. Inside were documents, yellowed parchment paper, bond certificates, government contracts, and the patent. Sal watched me. He knew I had done well for myself. He knew I had money. But he didn't know this. Nobody knew this. "Is that what I think it is?" Sal asked. I pulled out the top document. It was a bearer bond issued by the United States Treasury in 1982. Face value, $50,000. There were 20 of them in the stack. And underneath them was the deed. The deed to the commercial warehouse district down by the port. 6 city blocks. I bought them in the 90s through a shell corporation when the city was bankrupt. Everyone thought I was crazy. Now that land was being developed into high-rise condos. The lease payments alone were worth millions a year. And at the bottom, the patent, the hydraulic valve. The reason the Navy paid me a consultation fee every month that was more than Jamal made in 5 years, Tiffany had sold this. She had sold the car that held the keys to the kingdom. She sold it for $80,000, Sal said, shaking his head. She could have had it all, Clyde, if she had just been decent, if she had just waited, if she had just treated you with an ounce of respect. "She is not decent," I said, putting the documents back into the envelope, "and she does not know respect. She only knows price tags." "So what now?" Sal asked. "I haven't processed the paperwork yet. I wrote her the check, but I can put a stop payment on it. I can report the car as stolen. I can call the cops right now and have them waiting for her at the airport." I looked at the envelope in my hand. I looked at the car. "No," I said. Sal looked surprised. "No. Clyde, she stole from you. She forged your signature. This is prison time. Real prison time." "I know," I said, "and if I send her to prison, Jamal will hate me forever. He will see me as the tyrant who destroyed his life. He won't see her greed, he will only see my vengeance. He is weak, Sal. He is blinded by her. If I attack her directly, he will defend her. He will go down with the ship." "So you are just going to let her get away with it?" Sal asked, incredulous. "You're going to let her take 80 grand of my money and fly to Dubai and live it up while you sit in your basement?" I smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a shark that has just smelled blood in the water. "No, Sal. I am not going to let her get away with anything. I am going to let her hang herself." I walked over to the workbench in the corner of the bay and laid the envelope down. "She thinks she has $80,000, I said. "She thinks the check is cleared. She thinks the money is in her account. It shows as pending, Sal said. It will clear in 48 hours unless I stop it. Exactly, I said. 48 hours. That is enough time for them to get on the plane. That is enough time for them to land in Dubai. That is enough time for them to check into the Burj Al Arab or wherever they are staying. That is enough time for them to order the champagne and the caviar. I looked at Sal. Let the check hang, I said. Let it sit in pending. Let her see the numbers in her account. Let her feel rich. Let her spend money she doesn't have on credit cards she thinks she can pay off. And then Sal asked, grinning. And then I said, when they are 7,000 miles away, when they are sitting at dinner in the most expensive restaurant in Dubai, when the bill comes, kill the check. Sal started to laugh. It was a deep belly laugh that echoed off the concrete walls. Oh, that is cold, Clyde. That is ice cold. You are going to strand them. I am going to educate them, I corrected. I am going to teach them about liquidity, about cash flow, about the difference between pending and cleared. Sal wiped a tear from his eye. You are a scary man, Clyde Washington. I am glad we are friends. I picked up the envelope and tucked it into the inside pocket of my jacket. I patted the fender of the Shelby one last time. Keep her here, Sal. Keep her safe. Don't let anyone see her. If Tiffany calls, tell her the paperwork is processing. Tell her it's a banking delay. Tell her whatever you have to tell her to keep her calm until she gets on that plane. I got you, Sal said. I will tell her the bank's computers are down. I will tell her the wire transfer is stuck in the cloud. She won't know the difference. She doesn't know how anything works. Good, I said. I started to walk toward the door. Clyde, Sal called out. I stopped and turned around. What about the son, Sal asked. Jamal. He is a good kid deep down, isn't he? I remember him when he was little. He used to come in here with you. He is, I said, but he is lost. He has forgotten who he is. He thinks he can buy respect. He thinks he can marry class. He is going to get hurt, Sal said. When this all blows up, he is going to be in the middle of the blast radius. I know, I said quietly. I know. But sometimes, Sal, you have to break a bone to reset it properly. He needs to see her for what she is. He needs to see her when the money runs out. He needs to see her when the credit cards decline. He needs to see her when there is no audience and no Instagram filter. Only then will he wake up. And if he doesn't, Sal asked. Then I have lost him, I said, and nothing I do will matter anyway. I walked out of the service bay and into the cool night air. I climbed into my truck and started the engine. I drove home slowly. The city was asleep. The streets were empty. When I got back to the house, it was dark. The only light came from the street lamp outside, casting long shadows through the windows. I walked inside and locked the door behind me. I stood in the foyer and listened. I could hear the faint sound of the television upstairs. They were watching a movie, probably planning their outfits for tomorrow, probably toasting to their brilliance. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hand was steady now. The shaking had stopped. The grief had been replaced by purpose. I went to the basement door and opened it. I walked down the stairs to my cot. I took off my jacket and hung it on the back of a chair. I took the envelope out of my pocket and slid it under the mattress. It was safe there, safer than it had been in the car. I sat on the edge of the cot and untied my boots. Tomorrow morning the game would begin. They would leave. They would fly. They would soar. And I would be here, waiting. I lay back on the thin mattress and stared up at the ceiling. I imagined the plane taking off. I imagined Tiffany sipping champagne in first class. I imagined Jamal trying to relax, trying to convince himself that this was all okay. I whispered into the darkness, "Fly high, son. Fly as high as you can, because the fall is going to be a long one, and I will be waiting at the bottom." I closed my eyes and let the hum of the furnace lull me to sleep. I needed my rest. I had a busy few days ahead of me. I had a house to reclaim. I had a legacy to protect. And I had a lesson to teach. A lesson that cost $80,000. But the tuition was going to be much, much higher. I held the envelope in my hands and I felt the weight of 40 years of sweat and oil and sleepless nights. My hands were trembling just a little bit, not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of the irony. I reached inside and pulled out the stack of papers. They smelled like old paper and cedar wood, the smell of the safety deposit box where I had kept them for decades before moving them to the car for transport. I laid them out on the workbench next to a socket wrench. Bearer bonds. I bought them in 1982. Back then, interest rates were through the roof, and I had just landed my first major contract with the Defense Department designing silence valves for the Ohio-class submarines. I did not trust banks, and I did not trust the stock market. I trusted paper I could hold. I trusted government debt that paid a coupon every 6 months. I looked at the face value printed on the corner of the top bond. $50,000. There were 40 of them in the stack. Do the math. That is $2 million in principal. With the accrued interest, we were looking at closer to $3 million. And underneath the bonds was the trust document. I had drawn it up myself and had Saul notarize it 10 years ago. It was a revocable living trust. The beneficiary was Jamal Washington. The trigger clause was simple. Upon the death of Clyde Washington, the contents of this trust transfer immediately to the beneficiary. I stared at the paper. I stared at my son's name typed in bold letters. This was his inheritance. This was his future. This was the money that was supposed to buy him a house, cash, send his kids to college, and let him retire at 50. I had built this for him. I had hidden it away, scrimping and saving, driving an old truck and wearing work boots, so that one day he could live like a king. And his wife had sold it for $80,000. She had sold a $3 million fortune and a $250,000 car for the price of a used luxury SUV. She did not just rob me. She robbed her husband. She robbed her future children. She took a torch to her own legacy because she wanted to go to a shopping mall in the desert. I looked at Sal. He was leaning against the tool chest, his arms crossed over his grease-stained coveralls. He was watching my face. He saw the realization hit me. She missed the jackpot, Clyde, Sal said softly. She was sitting on a winning lottery ticket and she traded it for a bus pass. She never looked, I whispered. She was so busy counting the 80 grand she never looked under the carpet. Greed makes you blind, Sal said. It gives you tunnel vision. She saw the car and she saw a price tag. She didn't see the value. I put the papers back in the envelope. I did not want to look at them anymore. They made me sick. They represented a love for my son that he clearly did not return. So Sal, I said, my voice hardening, you wrote her a check. I did. Sal nodded. He walked over to his desk in the corner of the bay and picked up a clipboard. I wrote her a cashier's check from the dealership account. $80,000. Then it is done, I said. She has the money. Sal smiled. It was a small, tight smile. The kind of smile a mechanic gives you when he knows he fixed the problem before you even knew you had one. Clyde, we have known each other a long time. Do you really think I would hand over 80 grand to a woman with a shaky hand and a forged title without covering my ass? I looked at him. What did you do? I gave her the check, Sal said. But I flagged it in the system. I called my banker right after she walked out the door. I told him I suspected fraud on the title. I told him to put a 72-hour hold on the funds, standard procedure for a suspicious transaction. I felt a spark of hope. A hold. She thinks she has the money. Sal continued. She probably deposited it via her mobile app right in the parking lot. The bank will show the balance as pending. It will look like the money is there. It will show up in her available balance for credit transactions because the bank fronts the money while they verify. But the cash isn't actually there, Clyde. It hasn't cleared. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. So she is spending money she doesn't have, I said. Exactly, Sal said. She is floating on air. But in 48 to 72 hours, when the bank realizes the title signature doesn't match the DMV records, and when I confirm the fraud report that money is going to vanish, it will bounce harder than a rubber ball, and any checks she wrote against it, any credit card bills she paid, any transfers she made, they are all going to reverse. I looked at the Shelby. I looked at the envelope. I looked at Sal. And then the plan clicked into place. It was like the final gear locking into the transmission. It was cruel. It was cold. It was something Beatrice would have slapped me for thinking. But Beatrice wasn't here. And the woman who was sleeping in her bedroom had just tried to erase me. Don't call the police, I said. Sal frowned. Clyde, are you crazy? We have her. We can nail her right now. No, I said, not yet. I walked over to the car and ran my hand along the roofline. If we call the police now, I said, they arrest her here. She cries. She gets a lawyer. She gets a he. She claims it was a misunderstanding. She claims I gave her verbal permission. It becomes a civil dispute. Jamal backs her up because he is scared of her. It gets messy, and she learns nothing. Sal listened. He chewed on his unlit cigar. But I continued, if we let her go, if we let her get on that plane. Sal's eyes widened. He started to see it. She is going to Dubai, I said. One of the most expensive cities in the world. She has booked first-class tickets. She has booked a 5-star hotel. She is planning to shop until she drops. She is doing all of this because she thinks she has $80,000 in the bank. Sal chuckled, a low rumble in his chest. And she has zero. Less than zero, I said. Because I'm going to empty the joint account she shares with Jamal. I am going to leave them with nothing but the lint in their pockets. I turned to Sal. Here is what we are going to do. You are going to keep that hold on the check. Do not cancel it yet. Just let it sit in pending. Let it tease her. Let her see that number on her screen. Let her feel safe. And then Sal asked, let them fly, I said. Let them land. Let them check into the hotel. Let them eat a $2,000 dinner. Let them get comfortable. I paused. I imagined Tiffany's face. I imagined the arrogance. And then I said, when they are 7,000 miles from home in a country with strict laws about unpaid debts, kill the transfer. Sal let out a low whistle. That is nuclear Clyde. If she can't pay her hotel bill in Dubai, they don't just kick you out, they arrest you. Debt is a crime over there. I know, I said. I did some consulting work in the Emirates back in the 90s. I know exactly how their legal system works. If you bounce a check or default on a bill, you go to jail until you pay. You are going to let them get arrested? Sal asked. His voice was serious now. He was looking at me not as a friend, but as a man who was seeing a side of me he hadn't seen since the war. I am going to let them face the consequences of their actions, I said. I am going to let them feel what it is like to be powerless. I am going to let them understand that money is not a toy. It is a tool, and when you play with it, you get cut. But Jamal, Sal said, he is your son. He, as I said, and my heart gave a painful squeeze. But he chose her. He stood there and watched her sell his mother's car. He watched her forge my name. He agreed to put me in the basement. He needs to wake up Sal. And sometimes the only way to wake someone up is to throw a bucket of ice water on them, or in this case, drop them in the middle of the desert with no money. Sal looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, Clyde. I will hold the transfer. I will tell my banker we are verifying the VIN number. I will buy you 72 hours. That is all I need, I said. I picked up the envelope with the bonds. I tucked it inside my jacket next to my heart. Take care of the car, Sal. Don't let anyone see it. If Tiffany calls, tell her it is standard procedure. Tell her the wire is stuck in the clearinghouse. Tell her whatever you have to tell her to keep her on that plane. I will handle it, Sal said. Go home, Clyde. Get some rest. You have a big show to put on tomorrow. I walked out of the dealership into the cool night air. I felt lighter. The crushing weight of the betrayal was still there, but now it had a direction. It had a target. I climbed into my truck and drove home. The streets were empty. The city was sleeping. But I was wide awake. When I got back to the house, I moved quietly. I didn't want to wake them. I wanted them to sleep soundly. I wanted them to dream of champagne and caviar. I crept down the stairs to the basement. My new room. My cell. I sat on the cot and pulled out the envelope. I looked at the bonds one more time. $3 million. I thought about the years I spent building that nest egg, the overtime, the missed holidays, the danger. I did it for him. I did it for Jamal, and he tried to throw me away like yesterday's trash. I slid the envelope under the mattress of the cot. It was the safest place in the house because Tiffany would never look there. She would never lower herself to look under the bed of a poor old man. I lay down and stared at the ceiling. I could hear the floorboards creak above me. They were walking around up there, probably packing, probably laughing. Laugh while you can, I whispered to the darkness, because the clock is ticking. 72 hours, that was all the time they had left. And then the check would bounce, and reality would hit them like a freight train. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who has just armed a trap and is waiting for the snap. I went back inside the house and walked up the stairs to the master bedroom. It was strange walking into a room that had been mine for 30 years knowing it was no longer my territory. I pulled 2 cardboard boxes from the back of the closet. They were old boxes, dusty, used for Christmas ornaments usually. Now they were for my life. I started packing. I did not take much. I took my work boots, my flannel shirts, a few pairs of denim jeans that were soft from years of washing. I took the picture of Beatrice from the nightstand. I took my Bible. I took my medication. Tiffany stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching me. She had a glass of wine in her hand, even though it was barely noon. She was smiling that tight, victorious smile of a general watching the enemy surrender their sword. "You are making the right choice, Clyde," she said, swirling the wine. "You will be more comfortable down there. Less stairs to climb. It is better for your knees." I did not look at her. I just kept folding my shirts, placing them neatly in the box. I learned in the Navy that order is the only defense against chaos. When the world is falling apart, you make your bed. You fold your clothes. You maintain discipline. "I am sure it will be fine," I said. My voice was flat, emotionless. She turned her head toward the hallway where Jamal was hovering. He couldn't even look in the room. He was pretending to check the thermostat. "See, Jamal?" She called out, her voice loud and sharp. "I told you he would be reasonable. The old man knows his place. He knows when to step aside and let the next generation take over. It is the circle of life, babe." I paused with a sock in my hand. The old man knows his place. She was right. I did know my place. My place was the captain of this ship, and I was about to jettison the cargo to save the vessel. I finished packing. I taped the boxes shut. I lifted one onto my shoulder. It wasn't heavy. A man's needs are simple when he has nothing left to prove. I walked past Tiffany. She did not move out of the way. I had to turn my body to squeeze through the door frame. I smelled her perfume. It was cloying, sweet, expensive. It smelled like greed. I walked past Jamal in the hallway. "Dad," he whispered. "Let me help you with that." He reached for the box. I pulled away. "I got it, son," I said. "I have carried heavier things than this." I walked down the hall to the kitchen door that led to the basement. I opened it and stared down into the dark. The stairs were steep. The wood was unfinished. I went down, one step at a time. The air got cooler. The smell changed from lavender air freshener to damp earth and concrete. I reached the bottom and set the box on the floor. I went back up for the second one. When I was done, I looked around my new kingdom. A concrete floor, exposed pipes, the furnace humming in the corner like a sleeping beast. The cot they had set up was in the middle of the room under a single bare light bulb. It looked like a holding cell. I sat down on the cot. I listened to their footsteps above my head. Click, clack, thump, thump. They were moving around, reclaiming the space. I heard furniture being dragged. I heard laughter. They were celebrating. I reached under the mattress and felt the envelope. It was still there. Hard. Real. The only reality in this house of cards. I spent the rest of the day in the basement. I did not go up for dinner. I ate a granola bar I had in my pocket. I drank water from the utility sink. I was in stealth mode. Silent running. When you are hunting a submarine, you do not make noise. You wait. You listen. You let the target reveal itself. The next morning came early. I heard the alarm clock buzzing upstairs through the floorboards. I heard the shower running. I heard the frantic energy of departure. I went upstairs to the kitchen. I made a pot of coffee. Black. Strong. Tiffany came down first. She looked like $1 million. Or at least what she thought $1 million looked like. White linen suit. Gucci sunglasses. A scarf that probably cost more than my first truck. She was dragging a suitcase that was so new the tags were still on it. "Morning, Clyde," she said, not looking at me. She went straight to the fridge and grabbed a bottle of water. Jamal came down a minute later. He was struggling. He had 4 suitcases, big ones, hard shell, designer print. He looked exhausted already. "Morning, Dad," he mumbled. I leaned against the counter sipping my coffee. "Big day," I said. "Huge day," Tiffany corrected. "We are going to change the game, Clyde. You watch. When we get back, things are going to be different." "I have no doubt about that," I said. She checked her phone. "The Uber Black is 5 minutes away. Jamal, did you grab my ring light?" "I got it, babe," Jamal said. "Did you grab the camera bag?" "I got it." "Did you transfer the rest of the car money to the checking account?" "I did it last night," Jamal said. "It showed as available balance this morning," good Tiffany said. "Because I plan on doing some damage at the airport. I need a new tote bag for the flight." I watched them. They were vibrating with adrenaline, the high of unearned wealth. It is a powerful drug. It makes you feel invincible. It makes you feel like the laws of physics do not apply to you. A car honked outside. "That is us," Tiffany squealed. She grabbed her carry-on. "Let's go, Jamal. Dubai is waiting." She walked to the door. She paused with her hand on the knob. She turned to look at me one last time. Her eyes swept over my flannel shirt, my work pants, my boots. She sneered. "Try to keep the basement clean, Clyde," she said. "And don't come upstairs unless it is an emergency. I don't want the house smelling like old man when we get back." "I will do my best," I said. She opened the door and walked out into the sunlight. Jamal followed her, dragging the luggage. He stopped in the doorway. He looked at me. There was something in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. "Bye, Dad," he said. "Goodbye, son," I said. He walked out and closed the door. I moved to the window. I pulled back the curtain just an inch. I watched the driver load their bags into the back of a black Cadillac Escalade. I watched Tiffany get into the back seat. She was already on her phone, probably posting a selfie. #JetSet. #blessed. I watched the car pull away. I watched it turn the corner and disappear. I let the curtain fall back into place. The house was silent. I walked to the living room and sat down in the armchair Jamal had vacated. I pulled out my phone. I am a man who likes information. Information is ammunition. Before I retired, I set up alerts, notifications. I like to know when things move. I opened my banking app. I had access to the joint account I shared with Jamal. It was an old account from when he was in college. I never used it, but my name was still on it. I could see the transactions. I saw the deposit, $80,000, pending. And I saw the available balance. The bank, in its infinite wisdom, had made $10,000 of it available immediately as a courtesy. And then I opened my credit monitoring app. This was the part that made my blood run cold. 3 days ago, there had been an inquiry on my credit report, a hard pull, from American Express. And yesterday a new account had been opened, a platinum card, in the name of Clyde Washington. She had done it. She had stolen my identity. She must have found my social security card in the safe along with the car title. She applied for the card using my credit score, which was perfect, and her income, which was imaginary. She probably listed the car sale as assets. I logged into the American Express portal. It wasn't hard to guess the password she would use. It was the same one she used for everything. Her birthday. I saw the balance. 0. But the pending charges were already stacking up. $2,000 for the flight upgrade. $500 for the Uber Black. $3,000 at a boutique in the city yesterday. She was maxing me out. She was bleeding me dry before she even left the ground. I watched the screen for the next 2 hours. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. Charge. JFK duty-free. $400. Perfume probably. Charge. Caviar House. $300. Breakfast of Champions. Charge. Hermes Airport Boutique. $5,000. There was the new tote bag. She was burning through money she didn't have on a card that was fraudulent based on a check that was going to bounce. It was a masterclass in financial suicide. I sat there and I let her do it. I did not call the bank. I did not freeze the card. Not yet. I wanted the debt to be real. I wanted the theft to be undeniable. I wanted the paper trail to be so long and so thick that no lawyer in the world could argue it was a misunderstanding. Around noon, I got a text message. It was from Tiffany. It was a picture. A selfie. She was sitting in a first-class seat holding a glass of champagne. Jamal was next to her looking nervous but trying to smile. The caption read, "Wheels up, next stop Dubai. Haters gonna hate, but we are elevating." And then a second text came through, just for me. "Dad, make sure you water the plants and stay out of the master bedroom. Don't touch my stuff. I have cameras." I stared at the phone. Don't touch my stuff. She stole my car. She stole my credit. She stole my house. And she was telling me not to touch her stuff. I typed out a reply. My thumbs were heavy on the glass screen. "Have a safe flight, Tiffany. Enjoy it while you can." I hit send. I watched the little bubble indicate that it was delivered. I imagined her reading it. She probably laughed. She probably showed it to Jamal and said, "Look, the old man is trying to be ominous." She probably thought I was bitter. She probably thought I was powerless. She had no idea that I was the one flying the plane. I put the phone down. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I poured the rest of the coffee down the sink. I had work to do. I went to the basement and retrieved the envelope from under the mattress. I put it in my pocket. Then I went to the garage. I got into my truck. I drove to Mr. Goldstein's office. Saul Goldstein. He has been my lawyer for 30 years. He handles my patents. He handles my real estate. He knows where all the bodies are buried because he helped me dig the holes, legally speaking. I walked into his office without an appointment. His secretary looked up startled, but then she saw who it was. "Mr. Washington," she said, "go right in." I walked into Saul's office. He was on the phone, but he hung up when he saw my face. "Clyde," he said, standing up, "you look like you are ready to kill someone." "Not kill Saul," I said, sitting down in the leather chair opposite his desk. "Just evict." I pulled the envelope out of my pocket and tossed it on his desk. "And I need to update my will." Saul picked up the envelope. He looked inside. His eyebrows shot up. "You finally brought them out," he said. "It is time I said." "And Clyde, what is going on? My son and his wife just got on a plane to Dubai," I said. "They sold my Shelby to pay for it. They forged my signature, and she opened credit cards in my name." Saul's face went hard. He was a shark, too, in his own way. "That is criminal, Clyde. That is prison. I know I said, but I want to do this the right way. I want to execute the clawback clause on the house deed." "The one we put in last year," Saul asked. "The moral turpitude clause. That is the one I said. If the grantee commits a felony against the grantor, the deed reverts immediately." "I have the paperwork right here," Saul said, opening a file drawer. "All we need is proof of the felony." I pulled out my phone. I showed him the banking alerts. I showed him the credit card notifications. I showed him the text messages. And I told him about Sal and the car. "Sal will testify," I said. "He has the car. He has the forged title." "That is enough," Saul said. He pulled a fountain pen from his pocket. "I can file the reversion order today. By the time they land, that house will be yours again, legally." "Do it," I said. "And Clyde," Saul said, looking at me over his glasses. "What about the accounts, the joint one, and the credit cards?" I leaned back in the chair. "Let them run," I said. "Let her spend every dime of the credit limit. Let her dig the hole so deep she can see China. And then, I said, lock it all down." Saul nodded. He understood. "When should I execute the freeze?" he asked. I looked at my watch. It was a 12-hour flight to Dubai, plus the time difference. "Give them 48 hours, I said. Let them get comfortable. Let them get used to the service. Let them order the Wagyu beef." Saul made a note on his pad. 48 hours. And then we drop the hammer. "Exactly." I stood up to leave. "Clyde," Saul said, "you know, once we do this, there is no going back. Jamal, he is going to be caught in the crossfire." "He is not in the crossfire, Saul," I said, walking to the door. "He is holding the gun. He just doesn't know it is pointed at his own foot." I walked out of the office. The sun was shining. It was a beautiful day. I drove back to the house. My house. I walked inside. It felt different now. It didn't feel like their house anymore. It felt like a battlefield that I had just recaptured. I went upstairs to the master bedroom, Tiffany's sanctuary. I ignored her warning about the cameras. If she was watching, let her watch. Let her see the old man walking through her kingdom. I looked at the closet. It was stuffed with clothes, designer labels, things she had bought with my money, with the money she stole from the future of her own family. I walked over to the window and looked out at the street. "Enjoy your flight, Tiffany," I whispered. "Drink the champagne. Eat the caviar. Because when you land, you are going to find out that the credit limit on your life has just been reached, and I am the one who holds the bill." I stood in the center of the master bedroom, and the silence of the house felt heavy like the air before a thunderstorm. Tiffany had told me not to touch her stuff. She had warned me about cameras. I looked up at the corner of the room where a small black lens blinked a slow, rhythmic red light. I stared right into it. I wanted her to see me. I wanted her to know that the old man she had banished to the basement was walking through her sanctuary. I walked over to the desk in the corner. It was a sleek white thing, modern and flimsy, just like everything else she bought. It was covered in clutter. Makeup brushes, diet pills, and stacks of paper. I sat down in her chair. It creaked under me. I started shifting through the papers. I am a man who reads blueprints for fun. I know how to follow a line. I know how to trace a system back to its source. And what I saw on that desk was a schematic of a disaster. The first thing I found was a stack of unopened envelopes. They were stuffed into a drawer like dirty laundry. I picked one up. It was from a credit card company. Final notice. I opened it. The balance was $25,000. Past due. The interest alone was more than most people's car payments. I opened another one. A personal loan. Defaulted. I opened a third. A letter from a collection agency threatening legal action. Tiffany wasn't just living beyond her means. She was drowning. She was running a Ponzi scheme on her own life, using one card to pay off the interest on another, shuffling debt around like a street hustler with 3 cups and a ball. But then I found the bottom layer. The stuff she didn't leave in the drawer. It was tucked inside a hollowed-out book on the shelf. A fake book titled The Art of Success. Inside were handwritten notes, scrawled on napkins, on the backs of receipts. Vinny, 15,000, due Friday. High-stakes poker game, Jamal needs buy-in. And a letter. A typed letter on heavy paper with no letterhead. It was short, brutal. Mrs. Washington, we have been patient. The Dubai trip is a nice idea, but we expect payment before you leave. If we do not receive the 80,000 by Tuesday, we will assume you do not value your husband's kneecaps. I felt a cold chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. 80,000. The exact amount she sold my car for. She didn't sell Beatrice to fund a brand launch. She didn't sell it to start a business. She sold it to save her skin. She sold it to pay off a loan shark she had borrowed money from, probably to fund the last luxury vacation or the last designer wardrobe update. And the Dubai trip. That wasn't a business trip. That was a Hail Mary. I looked at her notebook again, the one with the business plan. I read between the lines now. Find investor. Meet Sheikh. Secure funding. She was going over there to hunt. She was looking for a rich mark, someone to bail her out of the hole she had dug. She was taking my son to the other side of the world to dangle him as bait, or maybe just as a prop while she tried to con a billionaire. She wasn't an influencer. She was a grifter, a desperate, dangerous grifter who had run out of road. I sat back in the chair and looked at the blinking red light of the camera. You are in trouble, Tiffany, I whispered. You are in deep, deep trouble. She had sold my memories to pay for her mistakes. She had stolen my identity to keep her house of cards standing for one more week. And she had dragged my son into the middle of a shark tank without a cage. I felt a surge of protectiveness for Jamal mixed with a hot, burning rage. He was an idiot, yes. He was weak. But he was my blood, and she was using him as collateral. I took the letter from the loan shark. I took the credit card statements. I took photos of them with my phone, evidence. Then I put everything back exactly where I found it. I closed the hollow book. I shut the drawer. I stood up and walked out of the room. I went downstairs to my office. The real office. The one in the basement that they thought was just a storage room for my old magazines. I have a safe down there. A real safe. Not the tin box in the closet upstairs. This one is fireproof, waterproof, and bolted to the foundation. I opened it. Inside were the deeds. The real deeds. I pulled out the file for the house. 124 Maple Drive. I had transferred the title to Jamal 2 years ago. I wanted him to have stability. I wanted him to feel like a man. But I wasn't stupid. I had seen the way Tiffany looked at the property. I had seen the way she calculated the square footage. So I had Saul put a clause in the transfer agreement, a reversionary clause. It was standard in some trusts, but rare in a direct transfer. In the event that the grantee or their spouse attempts to encumber, sell, or liquidate any asset belonging to the grantor without express written permission, or if they commit any act of financial malfeasance against the grantor, the title to the property shall immediately revert to the grantor. Financial malfeasance, selling a car you don't own, forging a signature, opening fraudulent credit cards. She had checked every box. She had triggered every tripwire I had laid. I picked up the phone and dialed Saul's direct line again. It is me, I said. Clyde, did they take off? They are in the air, I said. And Saul, I found the motive. Do tell. She owes money to the wrong people, Saul. Unofficial lenders, $80,000. That is why she sold the car so cheap. She needed cash fast. And Dubai isn't a vacation. It is a fishing expedition. She is looking for a whale. Saul let out a low whistle. She is desperate. She is dangerous, I corrected. She put a target on my son's back. If she doesn't pay these people, well, the note was specific about Jamal's knees. Okay, Saul said, his voice shifting into combat mode. So we need to move fast. We need to cut her off before she drags him down any further. Execute the reversion, I said. Pull the deed. I want that house back in my name by the end of the business day. I can do that, Saul said. I have the affidavit of forgery from Sal regarding the car. That constitutes financial malfeasance against the grantor. It triggers the clause automatically. I just need to file the notice with the county clerk. File it, I said. And Saul, initiate eviction proceedings. Against who? Against the occupants, I said. When they land, I want them to be trespassing. You are locking them out. I am locking them out, I said. I am changing the locks today. I am putting their stuff on the curb. If they want back in, they can call the police. And if they call the police, they have to explain why they sold a stolen car. It is aggressive, Clyde. It is necessary, I said. She is a cancer, Saul. You don't treat cancer with aspirin, you cut it out. Consider it done, Saul said. I will email you the confirmation once it is filed. Anything else? Yes, I said. The credit card she opened in my name, the Amex Platinum, the Visa. I flagged them, Saul said. The fraud alert is active, but you said you wanted to let them run. I changed my mind, I said. If she owes money to sharks, I don't want her paying them with my credit. Freeze them. Freeze everything. I want her wallet to be a brick. Understood. I will call the fraud departments now. By the time they land, that plastic will be useless. Good. Thank you, Saul. I hung up. I sat there in the silence of the basement. I looked at the deed in my hand. It was my house again. It had always been my house. I had just let them borrow it, and they had disrespected the loan. I stood up and walked upstairs. I went to the front door. I opened it and stepped out onto the porch. The neighborhood was quiet. Birds were singing. A landscaping truck was driving slowly down the street. I walked to the garage. I grabbed my toolbox. I grabbed a new deadbolt set I kept in stock. I went to the front door. I took out my screwdriver. I started taking the lock apart. It felt good. It felt like fixing something that was broken. I removed the old hardware. The brass was tarnished. I threw it in the trash. I installed the new lock. Heavy duty, grade 1 security. I tightened the screws. I tested the key. Click, thunk, solid. I did the same for the back door, and the side door, and the door leading from the garage to the house. I locked them all out. Then I went back to the master bedroom. I grabbed a stack of boxes. I didn't bother folding her clothes this time. I wasn't packing for a trip. I was clearing out debris. I swept her designer dresses off the hangers and stuffed them into the boxes. I threw in the shoes, the bags, the endless bottles of lotions and creams. I carried the boxes downstairs and stacked them in the driveway. It made a wall of cardboard and greed. I went back for Jamal's things. I was gentler with his. I folded his shirts. I packed his books. I put his framed diploma on top so the glass wouldn't break. I put his boxes next to hers, but separate. Even in eviction, I wanted him to know there was a difference. When I was done, the house felt lighter. It felt bigger. The echo was back. I walked through the empty rooms. I opened the windows to let the fresh air in to blow out the smell of her perfume. I sat down in my armchair in the living room, the one Jamal had been sitting in when he told me to move to the basement. I looked at my watch. They were somewhere over the Atlantic now, sipping wine, watching movies, thinking they had gotten away with it. I pulled out my phone and checked my email. A message from Saul Goldstein, subject deed reversion confirmation. Attached was a PDF, a digital copy of the filing receipt. The house was mine, legal, binding, irrevocable. I forwarded the email to Jamal. I didn't add a message. I didn't need to. The document spoke for itself. He wouldn't see it until he landed and turned his phone on. That moment, that precise moment when the plane touches down and everyone turns off airplane mode and the notifications start flooding in. Ping, 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 credit card declined, fraud alert, bank account frozen, eviction notice. It was going to be a symphony of bad news. I closed my eyes and listened to the silence of my home. I was alone. But I was the captain again. And the mutiny was over. I sat in my armchair in the darkened living room, the glow of my laptop screen the only light in the house. It was 3 a.m. here in the States, but in Dubai the sun was blazing. I had the flight tracker open in one tab and my banking alerts in another. The little plane icon touched down on the digital map. They had landed. I took a sip of water. My throat was dry, not from thirst, but from anticipation. I imagined the blast of desert heat hitting them as they stepped out of the airport. I imagined Tiffany adjusting her sunglasses, looking around as if she owned the sand beneath her feet. She had made it. She was in the land of gold and excess. I leaned forward watching the transaction feed. It didn't take long. Ping. Uber Black. Dubai International Airport to Burj Al Arab. $150. They weren't wasting any time. They were going straight to the most expensive hotel in the world. The one shaped like a sailboat. The one that charges more for a night than most people pay for rent in 3 months. I could see it all in my mind, pieced together by the digital breadcrumbs she was leaving behind. I checked her Instagram. She hadn't posted yet, but I knew she was filming. She was documenting her ascent to the throne. In Dubai, Tiffany was stepping out of the black SUV, the humidity instantly attacking her hair. She probably didn't care. She was looking up at the hotel towering over the Persian Gulf and seeing her future. "We made it, babe," she likely said to Jamal, squeezing his arm. "Look at this. This is where we belong." Jamal, tired from the flight, probably just nodded, dragging the designer luggage toward the gold-plated revolving doors. He was a follower. He would follow her off a cliff if she told him there was a VIP lounge at the bottom. Ping. Burj Al Arab. Front desk. Deposit hold. $5,000. The card went through. I had told Saul to freeze them, but international systems can be slow, or perhaps the credit limits were so high on the fraudulent card she opened that the initial pre-authorizations were slipping through the net before the fraud alert fully locked down the account. Or maybe, just maybe, the bank was letting them hang themselves a little further. Either way, she was checking in. I imagined them in the lobby. The atrium is the tallest in the world. Gold leaf everywhere. Aquariums. Fountains jumping like dancers. Tiffany would be spinning in circles, her phone out, recording a story. "Hey guys, just checked into the Burj. So excited for what's coming. Big things happening. Stay tuned." She would be smiling, that fake wide smile, showing off her teeth, showing off the life she stole from me. They got to the room. A suite, obviously. 2 floors. A staircase made of marble. A panoramic view of the ocean. Ping. Room service. $300. Champagne. And probably some truffles. I watched the screen. I saw the pattern. She was testing the waters. She was swiping the card, waiting for the decline. And when it didn't come, she got bolder. "Order the wine, Jamal," she would say, kicking off her shoes and falling onto the massive bed. "The good stuff. We are celebrating." "But Tiffany," Jamal would whisper, the voice of reason trying to claw its way out of his throat. "The money. Did you check the account?" "I checked it at the airport," she would snap. "It's there." "It said pending," Jamal would remind her. "It hasn't cleared." "It's the weekend, Jamal. Or the time zone. Or international banking regulations. Who cares? It shows in the balance. That means we can spend it." She was wrong. Dead wrong. Pending meant the bank saw the check. It meant they acknowledged the piece of paper. It did not mean they had the cash. It was a digital ghost. A mirage in the desert. But she didn't know finance. She knew spending. Ping. Luxury exotics rental. $2,500. She rented a car. Not just a car. A Lamborghini Huracan. Probably neon green or bright orange. Something loud. Something that screamed, "Look at me." I pictured her driving it, revving the engine in front of the hotel valet. She probably couldn't even drive a car with that much power. She would grind the gears. She would curb the wheels. But it didn't matter. It was a prop. A 60-second video clip for TikTok. Living my best life in Dubai, #Lambo, #bossbabe. I refreshed my banking screen. The joint account balance was still 0. I had drained it. But she wasn't using that card. She was using the Amex Platinum she opened in my name, the one with the $50,000 limit. She was burning my credit score to keep herself warm. Ping. The Dubai Mall. This was it, the main event. The Burj Al Arab was just the appetizer. The mall was the main course. I imagined them walking through the massive corridors, the air conditioning freezing, the smell of oud wood and expensive leather everywhere. Tiffany would be walking fast, her heels clicking on the polished marble, her eyes darting from store window to store window. Gucci, Prada, Versace. She stopped at Hermes. I saw the transaction hit a few minutes later. Ping. Hermes. $12,000. A Birkin. Or maybe a Kelly. A bag. A leather sack to hold things. $12,000. That was a year of mortgage payments for some people. That was a college tuition. Jamal must have been sweating. I could feel his anxiety from across the ocean. "Tiff, that is a lot," he would say, looking at the receipt. "Are you sure the check still says pending?" "Stop being such a buzzkill," she would hiss at him, grabbing the orange shopping bag. "The 80,000 is practically ours. This is an investment. I need this bag for the meeting with the investors. You have to look rich to get rich, Jamal. Rule number 1. She didn't have a meeting. She didn't have investors. She was the investor investing in her own delusion. Ping, Rolex boutique, $15,000. She bought him a watch, a bribe, a way to shut him up. "Here, babe," she would say, fastening the heavy gold watch onto his wrist. "Now you look like a CEO. Stop worrying. We have the money. Clyde's old car paid for this. He would want you to have it. He would want me to have it." The audacity made my jaw clench. I wore a Timex. I had worn the same Timex for 20 years. It kept time just fine. She was dressing him up like a doll, putting a gold watch on a man who couldn't even stand up to his wife to save his father's dignity. They walked out of the mall laden with bags. They looked like royalty. They felt like winners. But back in my basement, I was looking at a different set of numbers. The Amex card was at $32,000. The Visa card she opened was at $10,000. She was $42,000 in debt in less than 12 hours. And the $80,000 check that was supposed to cover it all, I picked up my phone and called Sal. "It is time," I said. "They landed?" Sal asked. "They landed, they shopped, they rented a Lamborghini." "You are kidding." "I wish I was. She is spending money like she is printing it in the hotel room." "So pull the plug." "Pull it," I said. "Cancel the check. Flag it as fraud. Tell the bank the signature is a forgery and you want the funds returned immediately." "Consider it done," Sal said. "I'm calling my banker right now. It will take a few hours to propagate through the system, but by tomorrow morning Dubai time, that 80,000 is going to vanish." "Good," I said. "And Sal?" "Yeah. Make sure you note the time. I want to know exactly when the carpet gets yanked." "Will do, Clyde." I hung up. I looked back at the screen. Ping. Nusser et Steakhouse. $2,000. Dinner. The famous Salt Bay restaurant. Gold-covered steaks. They were eating gold. I went to my small refrigerator in the basement. I pulled out a container of leftover chili. I put it in the microwave. I sat there eating my chili, watching the digital evidence of their gluttony. They were feasting. They were laughing. They were probably toasting to the Shelby. "To the old man," Tiffany would say, raising a glass of vintage red wine. "Thanks for the ride." And Jamal, looking at his new Rolex, would smile weakly and clink his glass against hers. "To the old man." I took a spoonful of chili. It was spicy. It warmed me up. "Enjoy the steak, kids," I thought. "Because tomorrow the menu changes. Tomorrow you are going to find out that the bank doesn't serve breakfast to people with insufficient funds." I checked the time. It was late afternoon in Dubai now. They would be heading back to the hotel soon, to sleep in the sheets with the high thread count, to dream of their empire. But the system was already working. The gears were turning. Somewhere in a data center, a line of code was being written. A flag was being raised. A check was being marked "Return to Maker." And when that happened, the pending balance would disappear. The available credit would drop to zero, and the fraud alerts would start screaming. I closed my laptop. I had seen enough. I climbed into my cot. I pulled the quilt up to my chin. I slept better than I had in years. I slept the sleep of a man who knows that justice is not just a concept, it is a mechanic. And I had just fixed the engine. 72 hours. That is how long it takes for a check to move from pending to cleared in the banking world. Or in this case, from pending to void. I was sitting in my basement office watching the clock on my laptop screen. It was 9 in the morning on the East Coast. That meant it was 6 in the evening in Dubai. Dinner time. I picked up the phone and called Sal. He answered on the first ring. "Do it, Sal," I said. "Consider it done, Clyde." I heard the clicking of a keyboard on the other end of the line. "I am flagging the transaction now," Sal said. "Reason code for return, signature irregular, suspected forgery, and..." Enter. "It is done. The money is gone, Clyde. It is clawed back." I felt a vibration go through the floorboards. It wasn't an earthquake. It was the sound of a foundation crumbling 7,000 miles away. "Now we wait," I said. I hung up and turned my attention to the banking alerts. I had a front row seat to the disaster. In Dubai, Tiffany and Jamal were seated at Oceano, the underwater restaurant at the Atlantis. I knew this because the pre-authorization charge for the reservation had hit the Amex card 2 hours ago. They were dining surrounded by sharks behind glass. It was poetic, really, because they were about to find out that the real sharks were the ones holding the credit card terminal. I imagined the scene. The table was probably covered in empty plates, lobster shells, empty wine bottles. The bill would be astronomical. Tiffany would be laughing, leaning back in her chair, feeling like she owned the ocean. She would be planning her next purchase, maybe a diamond necklace to match the new bag. Then the waiter would arrive, a polite man in a crisp white uniform holding a leather folder. The bill. I saw the transaction attempt hit my screen. $5,200. That was more money than my father made in a year when I was growing up. They had eaten it in 2 hours. Tiffany would not even look at the total. She would just slide the black Amex Platinum card into the folder and wave the waiter away. She was playing the part. The wealthy heiress. The carefree spender. But the card was dead. I had killed it yesterday along with every other line of credit she had opened in my name. The fraud alert was active. The account was frozen. On my screen, the status changed from processing to declined. Red text, bold letters. I leaned back in my chair and took a sip of water. In the restaurant, the waiter would be returning. He would not be smiling anymore. His walk would be different, stiff, formal. I imagined him leaning down to whisper to Tiffany so as not to cause a scene. "Madam, I am terribly sorry, but the card was declined." Tiffany would laugh. She would think it was a mistake, a glitch in the system. "Try it again," she would say, loud enough for the tables nearby to hear. "It is an Amex Platinum. It has no limit." The waiter would try it again and again. Declined, declined. The air at the table would start to get thin. Jamal would stop smiling. He would start to sweat. He knew deep down that this house of cards was shaky. "Here, use this one," Tiffany would say, pulling out the Visa card she had opened. The one with the $10,000 limit that she had already maxed out at the airport. Declined. Over limit. Now the panic would set in. The manager would come over, a man in a suit with eyes like flint. In Dubai, hospitality is legendary, but so is their intolerance for non-payment. If you cannot pay, you are a criminal. It is that simple. "Is there a problem, sir?" the manager would ask, looking at Jamal. Jamal would fumble for his wallet. He would pull out his own debit card, the one linked to our joint account, the account I had drained down to zero, the account that was connected to the house equity line that I had revoked. "Try this one," Jamal would stammer. "It is my personal card." I saw the attempt hit the system. Debit transaction. $5,200. Status insufficient funds. The 3 words that end a vacation faster than a hurricane. The manager would not be whispering anymore. He would signal to the security guards standing by the entrance. They would step forward, blocking the exit. The underwater view would suddenly feel very claustrophobic, like a cage. "Sir, madam," the manager would say, his voice cold. "We need to settle this bill immediately. Do you have cash?" Cash. They didn't have cash. They had $80,000 of imaginary money that Sal had just deleted from existence. Tiffany would be frantic now. She would be checking her banking app on her phone. She would be logging in to see why the transfers weren't working. And that is when she would see it. The pending deposit from Sal's luxury auto. The $80,000 that was the bedrock of her new life. It would be gone. Vanished. Replaced by a notification. Returned item. Altered/fictitious signature. And because the deposit was gone, the bank would instantly recalculate the balance. All the money she had spent in the last 2 days, the hotel deposit, the shopping, the Lamborghini rental, it would all crash down. The account would be in the negative, deep, deep in the red. She would scream. I knew she would scream. She would scream at Jamal. She would scream at the phone. "My money," she would yell. "Where is my money?" But nobody in that restaurant would care about her missing money. They only cared about the $5,000 she owed them for the food she had just digested. The manager would pick up the phone, not to call the bank, but to call the police. In Dubai, the police drive Ferraris and McLarens, but they are still the police, and they take debt very seriously. If you bounce a check or fail to pay a bill, you go to jail. You stay there until the debt is paid. Jamal would know this. He watched the same documentaries I did. He would be terrified. He would be looking at his wife, the woman who promised him the world, and seeing her for what she was, a fraud, a liability. Wait, Jamal would say, his hands shaking. We can fix this. We just need to go back to the hotel. We have cash at the hotel. He was lying. They didn't have cash, but he was trying to buy time. The manager would shake his head. I cannot let you leave, sir. The police are on their way. No, please, Jamal would beg. Look, I have collateral. He would take off the Rolex. The $15,000 watch Tiffany had bought him with stolen money just yesterday. It was heavy. It was gold. It was the only real thing they had left. Take this, Jamal would say, sliding it across the tablecloth. It is worth 3 times the bill. Keep it. Just let us go get the money. The manager would look at the watch. He would pick it up, examining the weight. It was brand new, no scratches. And your passports, the manager would add. That would be the nail in the coffin. Tiffany would gasp. You can't take our passports. That is illegal. You committed theft of services, madam, the manager would reply. Until this bill is paid, you are not going anywhere. The passports ensure you return. Or you can wait for the officers. They will take your passports anyway when they book you into the detention center. Jamal would reach into his jacket pocket. He would pull out the 2 blue booklets. His hand would be trembling so bad he would almost drop them. He would hand them over. His freedom, his identity, his way home. The manager would take them. He would nod to the security guards. You have 1 hour, he would say. If you are not back with the cash, we hand these to the authorities and we file formal charges. They would scramble out of their chairs. They would run past the fish tanks, past the other diners who were staring in disgust. They would run out into the hot, humid night air of Dubai. But they had nowhere to run. They couldn't go back to the hotel. The hotel would have tried to run the card for the daily charges by now. It would have declined. Their room key wouldn't work. Their luggage would be held hostage. They were stranded, broke, and the clock was ticking. Back in my basement, I closed the laptop. I didn't need to see any more alerts. I knew exactly what was happening. I felt a heavy sadness settle in my chest. It wasn't regret. I did not regret what I had done. It was the sadness of a father watching his son learn that fire burns. I had told him not to touch the stove. I had warned him, but he had to touch it. He had to feel the heat to believe it. Now he was burned. I stood up and walked over to the small window that looked out at the backyard. It was dark outside. My reflection stared back at me in the glass. I looked old. I looked tired. But I looked resolved. They would be calling soon. The panic call. The save us call. I walked over to my cot and sat down. I waited. 10 minutes later, the phone rang. It was Jamal. I let it ring 3 times before I picked up. Hello? Dad? Jamal was sobbing. He was hyperventilating. Dad, you have to help us, please. We are going to jail. I kept my voice calm, slow. What happened, son? Everything is gone, Dad. The money, the $80,000, it disappeared. The bank took it back. They said the signature was fake, and the credit cards, they are all declined. We are at a restaurant. We owe $5,000. They took my passport. Dad. They took my watch. If we don't pay in an hour, they are sending us to prison. I listened to his terror. It was real. It was raw. And what about Tiffany, I asked. What does she have to say? She is freaking out, Jamal said. She is screaming at the bank on the phone, but they won't talk to her because the account is in your name. Dad, please. You have money. I know you have savings. Just transfer us $5,000. I will pay you back. I swear. I will work for the rest of my life to pay you back. I closed my eyes. This was the moment, the pivot point. I can't do that, Jamal, I said. What do you mean you can't? You have to. I am your son. I am a poor old man living in a basement, Jamal, I said, repeating the role they had cast me in. I don't have $5,000. I have a pension check that comes on the 1st of the month. That is it. No. Dad, Jamal screamed. Stop lying. I know you have money. You always have money. I did, I said. I had a car, a 1967 Shelby. It was my nest egg. It was my emergency fund. But someone sold it. Someone stole it. There was silence on the line. The weight of his actions finally landed on his shoulders. Dad, he whispered. You spent it, son, I said. You spent the money from the car before you even had it. You bought a watch. You bought a bag. You rented a Lamborghini. That was my car you were spending. That was your mother. Dad, I am sorry. I am so sorry. But please don't let me die in a Dubai prison. You aren't going to die, I said. But you are going to learn. What do we do? What do we do? You go to the consulate, I said. You tell them you are indigent. You tell them you are stranded. They won't pay your bill, but they might help you not disappear into the system. The consulate is closed, Dad. It is nighttime. Then you sleep on the street, I said. You wait until morning, and you pray that the restaurant manager is patient. Dad? Put Tiffany on the phone, I said. No, she is. Put her on. There was a fumbling sound. Then Tiffany's voice. She wasn't crying. She was angry. Vicious. You old bastard, she hissed. You did this. You canceled the check. I know you did. I did not cancel anything, I said calmly. The bank realized you forged a signature. That is a crime, Tiffany. Banks don't like crimes. You fix this right now, she screamed. You transfer money to that account, or when I get back, I will make your life a living hell. I will put you in the worst home I can find. I will let you rot. I laughed. It was a dry, dusty sound. You aren't coming back to this house, Tiffany. You don't live here anymore. What are you talking about? I changed the locks, I said. I executed the reversion clause on the deed. The house is mine. Your clothes are in boxes on the driveway. It looks like it might rain tomorrow, so I hope someone picked them up. You can't do that. That is illegal eviction. Try me, I said. Come back and call the police. Tell them you want to report an eviction. And while you are at it, tell them about the car you stole. Tell them about the credit cards you opened in my name. Tell them about the loan shark you owe 80 grand to. She went silent. The air went out of her. She knew. She knew I knew everything. You know about Vinny, she whispered. I know everything I said. I know you didn't sell the car for a brand launch. I know you sold it to save your own skin. And I know you dragged my son into the middle of it. Clyde, wait. No, I said. You listen. You are done. You are finished. You have no money. You have no home. You have no husband. Because if Jamal has half a brain, he will leave you right there on the sidewalk. I heard Jamal in the background. What about Vinny? What about the loan shark? That is her problem, I said loud enough for him to hear. Not yours, son, unless you sign the note. I hung up the phone. I stared at the wall. My heart was racing. It was done. I had cut the cord. I had dropped them into the abyss. Now I just had to wait and see if my son could learn to fly before he hit the bottom. I walked upstairs to the kitchen. I made myself a sandwich. I ate it standing over the sink. The house was quiet, peaceful. I thought about Jamal standing on a street corner in Dubai with no passport and no watch. I thought about the fear he must be feeling. It was necessary. It was the only way. But it still broke my heart. I washed my plate. I dried it. I put it away. Then I went to the living room and sat in the dark waiting for the sun to rise, waiting for them to find a way home. Or not. The tuition had been paid. Now we would see if the lesson stuck. I sat in my living room enjoying the silence of a house that finally felt like mine again. I had moved my things back upstairs. The boxes of flannel shirts and work boots were unpacked. My picture of Beatrice was back on the nightstand where it belonged. I had made myself a cup of chamomile tea and I was sitting in my favorite armchair, the one that faced the window looking out at the street. It was peaceful here. But 7,000 miles away in the desert heat of Dubai, I knew that peace was a luxury my son and his wife could no longer afford. I checked the time. It was late in Dubai. They had just fled the restaurant, leaving behind their dignity and their passports. They would be heading back to the hotel now, the Burj Al Arab, the 7-star sail that rises out of the ocean. They would be thinking that at least they had a room, at least they had a bed. They would be thinking that they could hide there and figure something out. They would be thinking that they could call the bank in the morning and scream until the $80,000 magically appeared. They were wrong. I wasn't there, but I know how hotels like that work. I know what happens when a credit card declines on a deposit hold. The system flags you, the security team is alerted, and the hospitality ends abruptly. I imagined them walking into that massive gold leaf atrium. They would be sweaty, disheveled, and terrified. They would walk to the elevators trying to look invisible, trying to blend in with the billionaires and the oil tycoons. They would press the button for their floor. They would walk down the plush hallway to their suite. Tiffany would reach into her purse and pull out the key card. She would tap it against the lock. She would expect a green light and the click of the mechanism. Instead, she would get a red light, a solid, unblinking red light. She would try it again. Tap, red light, tap, red light. Jamal would try his card, tap, red light. The door was locked. Electronic lockout. It is the polite way of saying you are no longer welcome here. And then I knew what would happen next because I had set the stage. The elevator doors down the hall would open. A manager would step out, accompanied by two large men in dark suits. Security. Mr. and Mrs. Washington, the manager would say. His voice would be smooth but hard, like polished marble. We seem to have a problem with your payment method. Tiffany would try to bluster. She would try to pull rank. Do you know who I am? She would scream. I am an influencer. I am going to ruin you on social media. My card is fine. It is a bank error. The manager would not blink. We have tried your card for the daily incidentals, madam. It was declined. We tried the secondary card. Declined. And we have been informed by the restaurant downtown that there was an incident involving unpaid bills and police intervention. That is none of your business, Tiffany would snap. It is our business when our guests are insolvent, the manager would reply. Currently, you owe the hotel $15,000 for your stay thus far. The room rate, the room service, the spa treatments you booked, the car rental deposit. We need immediate settlement, $15,000. Jamal would look at Tiffany. Tiffany would look at Jamal. They didn't have $15, let alone $15,000. We can pay, Tiffany would lie. We just need to get into the room. My other wallet is in the safe. The manager would shake his head. I am afraid we cannot allow re-entry until the balance is cleared. Your luggage has been packed and is being held in storage. If payment is not received within the hour, we will be forced to contact the authorities. The authorities. Again, they were trapped in a hallway 7,000 miles from home with no room, no luggage, no passports, and the police closing in from two different directions. That was when desperation would truly set in. That was when Tiffany would make the call. Not to me. She was too proud for that yet. She would call the only person she thought had her money. Sal. My phone didn't ring, but Sal's did. I knew because he texted me a screenshot of the incoming call a minute later. She is calling, he texted. Answer it, I replied. Finish it. I could picture Tiffany huddled in a corner of the hotel lobby trying to keep her voice down so security wouldn't hear her. She would be holding the phone with a death grip. Sal, she would say, her voice trembling with rage and panic. This is Tiffany Washington. What the hell is going on? The transfer hasn't cleared. The bank says it is returned. I need that money, Sal. I need it right now. And Sal, sitting in his office back home with his feet up on the desk, looking at my beautiful Shelby parked safely in the bay, would take a slow drag of his cigar. Mrs. Washington Sal would say, his voice cold and flat, There is no money. What do you mean there is no money? She would shriek. You bought the car. You wrote the check. I canceled the check, Sal would say. You can't do that. That is breach of contract. I will sue you. I will burn your dealership to the ground. You sold me a stolen car, Mrs. Washington Sal would interrupt. Stolen. It was not stolen. It was my father-in-law's car. He gave it to me. That is not what he says, Sal would reply. Mr. Washington came here yesterday. He had the original title. He had the keys. And he told me he never authorized any sale. He told me you broke into his safe and forged his signature. That is a lie, Tiffany would scream. He is senile. He doesn't know what he is saying. He seemed pretty sharp to me, Sal would say. Sharp enough to file a police report. He took the car back, Tiffany. It is gone. The deal is void. And since you tried to sell me stolen property, I suggest you stop calling me before I add harassment to the list of charges I am giving to the detective. Click. Sal hung up. In the hotel lobby, Tiffany would be staring at her phone, her face draining of all color. The last lifeline had just been cut. The $80,000, her golden ticket, her safety net, was not just delayed. It was non-existent. It was a phantom. She would look at Jamal. Jamal, who was sitting on a velvet bench with his head in his hands. The money is gone, she would whisper. He took the car back. He told them I stole it. Jamal would look up. His eyes would be red. He would look at his wife, the woman who promised him the world, and he would see the ruin she had brought down on them. What do we do? He would ask, his voice cracking. Call him, she would hiss. Call your father. He is the only one who can fix this. Make him send money. Cry, beg, do whatever you have to do. Just get us out of here. And that is when my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Jamal. I let it ring. 1, 2, 3, 4. I took a sip of my tea. I smoothed the fabric of the armchair. I looked around my living room. It was clean. It was quiet. It was mine. I answered on the 5th ring. Hello, Dad. It was a wail, a sound of pure terror. Dad, help us, please. You have to help us. I kept my voice calm, even, detached. Who is this? I asked. It is me, Dad. It is Jamal. Dad, we are in trouble. We are in so much trouble. Oh, Jamal, I said. I thought you were in Dubai having the time of your life. How is the trip, son? How is the rebrand going? Dad, stop, please. We are trapped. We are at the hotel and they locked us out. They want $15,000, Dad. $15,000. Or they are going to arrest us. They already took my passport at the restaurant. Now the hotel is calling the police too. We are going to go to jail in a foreign country, Dad. You have to do something. I listened to him. I heard the fear, but I also heard the entitlement. He still thought I was his safety net. He still thought I was the old man who would fix everything if he just cried loud enough. I don't understand, son, I said. Why are you calling me? You have $80,000 from the car sale. Tiffany said she handled everything. It is gone, Dad. It is gone. The dealership canceled the check. Sal, he said you took the car back. He said you told him it was stolen. It was stolen, Jamal, I said. Dad, no. Tiffany she borrowed it. We were going to pay you back. We were investing. You forged my signature, I said. You broke into my safe. That is not borrowing, son. That is a felony. Dad, please, we can argue about this later. Right now we are going to die here. They are going to throw us in a hole and forget about us. You have to send money. Just $15,000. Please, I know you have it. You have savings. You have the house equity. Just transfer it. I will pay you back the rest of my life, I swear. I leaned back in my chair. I looked at the ceiling. I can't do that, Jamal. Why not? His voice rose to a scream. Why not? I am your son. Because I don't have any money, I said. What? I am just a poor old man, Jamal. I said, using the words they had used to describe me. I live in a basement, remember? I live on a fixed income. I wear old boots. I don't have $15,000 lying around. Dad, stop lying, Jamal screamed. I know you have money. You have to have money. I had a car, I said. A 1967 Shelby GT 500. That was my money. That was my nest egg. But someone took it. Someone sold it for pennies. Tiffany grabbed the phone. I could hear the rustle of movement. Clyde, you listen to me, she hissed. You old bastard. I know you have money. I saw the house deed. I know what that property is worth. You get a loan. You sell something. You get us this money right now, or I swear to God when I get back, I will put you in the darkest, nastiest nursing home in the state. I will have you declared incompetent. I will take everything. I laughed. It was a dry, dusty sound. You aren't coming back, Tiffany, I said. What? You aren't coming back to this house. You don't live here anymore. What are you talking about? I executed the reversion clause, I said. The deed. The one you didn't read when I signed the house over to Jamal. It says if you steal from me, the house comes back to me. Saul filed the paperwork yesterday. The house is mine, Tiffany. The locks are changed. Your clothes are in boxes on the driveway. It looks like rain tonight, so I hope the neighbors took the good stuff. There was silence on the line, a silence so deep it felt like the ocean floor. You evicted us, she whispered. I reclaimed my property, I said. Just like I reclaimed my car. Just like I reclaimed my credit. By the way, good luck with those credit cards. I froze them all. Fraud alert, identity theft. You are holding plastic scrap. You can't do this, she screamed. We are stranded. We have nothing. You have each other, I said. And you have your business plan. Maybe you can find an investor in the hotel lobby. I hear they like bold entrepreneurs. Clyde. Wait. No, I said. I am done waiting. I waited for you to show me respect. I waited for my son to grow a spine. I waited too long. Dad. Jamal's voice was back on the line. He was sobbing. Dad, please. I am sorry. I am so sorry. She made me do it. I didn't want to. You are a grown man, Jamal, I said. Nobody makes you do anything. You chose. You chose the high life. You chose the easy way. Now you have to pay the toll. Dad, they are coming. I see the police cars outside. They are walking into the lobby. Dad, help me. I closed my eyes. It hurt. It hurt like a physical wound to hear him like that. But I knew if I saved him now I would lose him forever. He would never learn. He would always be her puppet. I love you, son, I said. Then help me. I am helping you, I said. I am letting you become a man. I hung up the phone. I turned it off. I put it on the table. I sat there in the silence. My heart was breaking, but my resolve was iron. They were on their own. For the first time in their lives, they were truly, completely on their own. I picked up my tea. It was cold. I drank it anyway. Outside, the sun was setting. Inside, the house was safe. The car was safe. The legacy was safe. My son was in a jail cell in Dubai. But maybe, just maybe, that was the only place he could finally find himself. I sat in the darkness of my living room, and I let the silence wash over me. It was a heavy silence. The kind that comes after a storm has passed, leaving nothing but wreckage in its wake. I had hung up the phone. I had severed the connection. But in my mind, I could still see what was happening 7,000 miles away. I did not need a live feed. I knew the laws of physics, and I knew the laws of Dubai. When you run out of momentum, you fall. And when you run out of money, you pay with your freedom. In the lobby of the Burj Al Arab, the opulent gold leaf pillars and the dancing fountains were witnessing a scene that would never make it onto Tiffany's Instagram feed. The hotel manager had made the call. He had no choice. A $15,000 debt is not a misunderstanding. It is a crime. I imagined the police arriving. They would not come in with sirens wailing. They would glide up to the entrance in white luxury patrol cars. The officers would be polite. Immaculate uniforms. Serious faces. They deal with tourists who think the rules do not apply to them every single day. They would approach the couple huddled near the reception desk. Tiffany would still be trying to argue. She would be using her loud voice, the one she used to intimidate waitresses and store clerks back home. She would be screaming about bank errors and lawsuits. She would be threatening to call the embassy. But the officers would not care. They would speak to the manager. They would review the bill. They would look at the declined credit cards on the counter. And then they would turn to my son and his wife. I could see Jamal's face, the color draining out of it, the sweat beading on his forehead. He was wearing the Rolex Tiffany had bought him with stolen money. A golden shackle, "Sir, madam," the officer would say. "You are unable to pay the outstanding balance." "We can pay," Tiffany would shriek. "My father-in-law is sending the money. It is just a delay." "We have verified with the bank," the officer would say calmly. "The funds were returned due to fraud. There is no money coming." That word, fraud. It hangs in the air like smoke. "Please," Jamal would beg, "just let us go. We will leave the country. We won't come back. I am afraid we cannot do that." The officer would reply, "In this country, debt must be settled. Until it is, you are under the custody of the state." Then the handcuffs would come out. I flinched in my armchair. The thought of my son in handcuffs made my stomach turn. I remembered holding his hand when he was a toddler, helping him cross the street. Now he was crossing a line I could not pull him back from. They would cuff Jamal first. He would not fight. He would slump his shoulders defeated. Then they would move to Tiffany. She would fight. She would pull away. She would scream that they were hurting her, that this was a mistake, that she was a celebrity. They would not be gentle. They would spin her around. They would click the metal cuffs onto her wrists. The sound of finality. They would be led out through the lobby, past the tourists sipping tea, past the influencers taking selfies. They would be paraded like criminals. The walk of shame. They would be put into separate cars. Tiffany would be screaming at Jamal through the window, blaming him, telling him to fix it. Jamal would just be staring out at the desert night, watching his life dissolve. I took a deep breath and stood up. It was done. They were in the system. Now I had to do my part here. I went upstairs and changed into a suit. My court suit, navy blue, crisp white shirt. I tied my tie with steady hands. I pinned my Navy service pin to the lapel. I wanted to look like a man who commanded respect. I grabbed the folder from the table, the folder containing the forged title, the credit card statements, the eviction notice, and the affidavit from Sal. I drove to the precinct. It was late, but the detectives were there. I had called ahead. Detective Miller was expecting me. I walked into the station. It smelled of stale coffee and floor wax. I walked up to the desk sergeant. "I am here to see Detective Miller," I said. "My name is Clyde Washington." He pointed me toward the back offices. Miller was a young guy, sharp eyes, tired face. He stood up when I walked in. Mr. Washington, he said, have a seat. I sat down. I placed the folder on his desk. I want to file a report, I said. Miller opened a notebook. Go ahead. I want to report the theft of a motor vehicle, a 1967 Shelby GT 500, value approximately $250,000. Miller whistled. That is a serious car. Who took it? My daughter-in-law, I said. Tiffany Washington. He wrote it down. Did she have permission? No, I said. She broke into my safe. She stole the title, she forged my signature, and she sold it to a dealership without my knowledge or consent. I opened the folder and slid the documents across the desk. Here is the affidavit from the dealership owner, Salvatore Moretti. He confirms the signature did not match. He confirms she represented herself as the owner. He has the car secured. Miller looked at the papers. This is grand theft auto, he said, and forgery in the first degree. There is more, I said. I slid the credit card statements across. She also stole my identity. She used my social security number to open 3 credit cards in my name. She charged over $40,000 in less than 48 hours. Identity theft, Miller said, adding it to the list. That brings it up to a federal level, potentially, and I continued, my voice getting quieter. I want to file charges for elder abuse, financial exploitation. Miller looked up. His pen stopped moving. Explain that one, Mr. Washington. I told him about the basement. I told him about the plan I overheard. I told him about how they moved me into a storage room so they could take over my house. I told him about the coercion, the manipulation, the way they made me feel like I was a burden so I would hand over my assets. Miller's face hardened. He had parents too. That is enough, he said, closing the notebook. We have more than enough for an arrest warrant. Where is she now? She is in Dubai, I said. Miller blinked. Dubai. Yes. She used the money she thought she got from the car sale and the credit card she opened in my name to fund a luxury trip. She took my son with her. Miller rubbed his temples. That complicates things. We can't just go pick her up. I know, I said. But you can issue a warrant. You can flag her passport, Miller said. We can put a red notice out. If she tries to board a plane, if she tries to cross a border, she will be flagged. That is what I want, I said. And the son, Miller asked. Is he involved? I hesitated. This was the hardest part. He was there, I said. He knew about the car. He benefited from the money, so he is an accomplice. I looked at the floor. I saw Jamal's face again. He is weak, detective. He did what she told him. But he did not sign the title. He did not open the cards. Miller nodded. He understood what I was not saying. I was giving my son a lifeline. A very thin one. We will focus on Tiffany, Miller said. She is the primary aggressor. But your son, if he is with her, he might get swept up when she is detained. He is already detained, I said. Excuse me. They were arrested tonight in Dubai, I said, for theft of services. They couldn't pay their hotel bill because I canceled the check and froze the cards. Miller leaned back in his chair. A slow smile spread across his face. You stranded them. I stopped them from spending any more of my money, I said. Miller laughed. Remind me never to cross you, Mr. Washington. So here is the situation, Miller said, leaning forward. They are in custody in Dubai. That is good. It means they aren't going anywhere. I am going to file these charges tonight. I will get a judge to sign the warrant first thing in the morning. We will upload it to the NCIC database and notify the State Department. What does that mean for them, I asked. It means that whenever Dubai is done with them, whenever they get deported or released, they are going to be sent straight back here, and we will be waiting at the gate with a pair of bracelets. And Tiffany. She is looking at 10 to 15 years, Miller said. Grand theft, forgery, identity theft, elder abuse. The prosecutor is going to have a field day, especially with the flight records. Flight records. Yes, Miller said, tapping the credit card statement. You have proof here that she bought the plane tickets with the fraudulent card. That connects the theft directly to the flight. It makes it interstate flight to avoid prosecution if we want to push it. It cements the intent. She stole the money specifically to flee the country. I hadn't thought of that. It was another nail in her coffin. Do it, I said. File the charges. I stood up. I felt lighter. The legal machinery was in motion. It was out of my hands now. It was in the hands of the state. Thank you, Mr. Washington, Miller said, shaking my hand. You did the right thing. A lot of people let family get away with this. They lose everything because they are afraid to act. I was afraid, I said. But I was more afraid of what would happen if I didn't stop her. I walked out of the station. The night air was cool. I got into my truck and drove back toward my empty house. I thought about Jamal sitting in a cell in Dubai. It would be hot. It would be crowded. He would be scared. I hoped he was thinking. I hoped he was thinking about the choices he made. I hoped he was thinking about the wife he chose. I hoped he was thinking about his father. I pulled into my driveway. I saw the wall of boxes still sitting there. Tiffany's life packed in cardboard. I walked past them and went inside. I went to the basement one last time. I packed up the cot. I folded the quilt. I carried them upstairs to the guest room. I was not sleeping in the basement anymore. I went to the master bedroom. I stripped the sheets off the bed. I threw them in the trash. I would buy new ones tomorrow. I lay down on the mattress. It felt huge without Beatrice. I closed my eyes. 7,000 miles away, my son was paying the price. And here, in the silence of my home, I whispered a prayer. Lord, watch over him. Keep him safe. But don't let him out. Not yet. He needs to sit in the dark for a while, so he can finally see the light. 30 days. In the grand scheme of a life, 30 days is a blink of an eye. It is a single page on a calendar. But when you are locked in a holding cell in the middle of the Arabian desert, 30 days is an eternity. It is enough time to forget what air conditioning feels like. It is enough time to forget the taste of filtered water. And it is certainly enough time to forget that you were ever an influencer who thought the world owed you a living. I was not there to see it, but I know what happened. I know because the consulate eventually sent a report, and I know because I know my son. And I know the woman he married. The Dubai detention center is not the Burj Al Arab. There are no gold faucets. There are no underwater restaurants. There is only concrete steel and heat. A dry, dusty heat that seeps into your bones and dries out your soul. Tiffany was in the women's wing. They took her phone. That was the first death she died. For a woman whose entire existence was validated by likes and comments, being cut off from the digital world was like being cut off from oxygen. She sat in a cell with 20 other women, some of them real criminals, some of them just unlucky souls who couldn't pay a bill. She had no filters, no ring lights, no contouring kits. The humidity and the heat stripped away the layers of makeup she wore like armor. Her hair, the blonde extensions she paid thousands for, started to mat and tangle. Her skin broke out. She looked raw. She looked real, and she hated it. But the worst part for her wasn't the heat or the food, which was rice and lentils 3 times a day. It was the silence. Nobody knew who she was. Nobody cared about her brand. To the guards, she was just inmate number 4782, a debtor, a thief. She spent her days pacing the small cell, muttering to herself. She wasn't praying. She was rehearsing her victim statement. She was blaming everyone but herself. She blamed the hotel. She blamed the bank. But mostly she blamed Jamal. And Jamal. My son was in the men's wing. It was overcrowded. It smelled of sweat and fear. He was a soft man, a man who used moisturizer and got manicures. He was not built for a cage. He sat in the corner of his cell, knees pulled up to his chest, trying to make himself small. He watched the other prisoners, men who looked hard, men who looked desperate. He realized for the first time in his life that he was prey. And in that darkness, in that heat, something broke inside him. The illusion shattered. They were allowed 1 supervised visit a week through a glass partition. The first time they saw each other was 7 days in. Jamal walked into the visitation room. He looked gaunt. His designer clothes were stained and wrinkled. He picked up the phone. Tiffany was on the other side. She looked wild. Her eyes were manic. "Did you call him?" she hissed into the receiver. "Did you call your father?" Jamal shook his head. "They only let me make 1 call to the consulate, Tiff. They said Dad isn't picking up international collect calls. You have to try harder," she screamed, slamming her hand against the glass. "You are the man, Jamal. Fix this. You are supposed to take care of me. You are supposed to provide." Jamal looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, he didn't see the glamour. He didn't see the prize he had won. He saw a woman who was willing to let him rot as long as she got out. "I can't fix it, Tiffany," he said, his voice hollow. "There is no money." "Oh, Dad cut us off. And honestly, I don't blame him." "Don't you dare side with him," she spat. "This is his fault. He set us up. He didn't make you steal his car," Jamal said quietly. "He didn't make you forge his signature. You did that, and I let you." "Oh, shut up," she said, rolling her eyes. "You enjoyed the money just as much as I did. You liked the watch, didn't you? You liked the first-class seat. You are just as guilty, Jamal. You are weak. That is your problem. You have always been weak. That is why your father hates you." Jamal flinched. It was a direct hit. "He doesn't hate me," Jamal whispered. "He is disappointed in me, and he should be." Whatever, Tiffany sneered. "Just get me out of here. Sell your kidney if you have to. Just get me money." The guard tapped Jamal on the shoulder. Time was up. He hung up the phone without saying goodbye. He walked back to his cell, and for the first time in 32 years, he didn't make an excuse for her. He sat on his bunk, and he let the truth wash over him like cold water. She didn't love him. She loved the lifestyle he couldn't afford. 7,000 miles away, I was doing some cleaning of my own. I had hired a crew of painters. I told them I wanted every inch of the house painted. No more beige, no more eggshell, no more of that sterile hospital look Tiffany loved so much because it looked good on Instagram. I painted the living room a deep, warm navy blue. I painted the kitchen a sunny yellow. I painted the trim a crisp white. I was putting color back into my life. I was reclaiming the space. The wall of boxes in the driveway was gone. I had called a charity that picks up donations for women entering the workforce. I told them to take it all, the shoes, the bags, the dresses. Somewhere out there, a woman who actually worked for a living was going to walk into an interview wearing a Gucci blazer, and she was going to get the job. That thought made me smile. But there was still debris to clear. I went into the guest room which they had used as a home office/filming studio. It was filled with ring lights, backdrops, and props. I dismantled it all. I broke the ring lights down and put them in the recycling bin. I rolled up the green screens. I found a stack of notebooks in the bottom drawer of the desk. Tiffany's journals. I sat down on the floor amidst the wreckage of her vanity and opened the top one. It was recent. The dates went back 6 months. I started reading. It was not a diary of dreams. It was a ledger of malice. March 12th. The old man is still breathing. He walks around the house like a ghost. I can't stand the sound of his boots. He smells like old oil and motor grease. I need him gone. I turned the page. April 4th. Jamal is useless. He won't ask for the deed. I have to push him. I have to make him feel like a man so he will do what I want. If we get the house, we can leverage it. I need 50 grand for the launch. I read on, my heart hardening with every word. May 15th. The Dubai plan is a go. Vinny is breathing down my neck. I need to get out of the country. If I can hook an investor over there, I can pay Vinny off and dump Jamal. I am so sick of his whining. Once I have the money, I am filing for divorce. I will take half the house and leave him with the old man. She was planning to leave him. She was going to use my money to pay her debts and then discard my son like a used tissue. But the entry that made me stop, the entry that made my hands shake with a cold fury, was dated just 2 days before they left. June 1st. Found a place for Clyde. Shady Pines. It is a state-run facility 2 hours north. It is a dump. Smells like bleach and urine. Perfect. It is cheap. Medicare will cover it. Once we get back from Dubai, I am going to slip something into his tea. Just enough to make him confused, disoriented. We will call the doctors, say he is having an episode, get him committed for observation. Once he is in the system, he is never coming out. We sell the house, liquidate the assets, and I am free. I closed the notebook. Slip something into his tea. They weren't just going to declare me incompetent. They were going to poison me. Maybe not to kill me, but to break my mind. To make me fit the narrative they had constructed. She was a monster, a true predator. I stood up. I took the notebook. I walked out to the backyard where I had a metal burn barrel I used for leaves. I threw the notebook in. I doused it with lighter fluid. I struck a match. I watched the pages curl and blacken. I watched her handwriting turn to ash. Shady Pines, I whispered to the flames. Smells like bleach and urine. I hoped she was enjoying the smell of the Dubai detention center. I heard the sanitation there left a lot to be desired. I went back inside. I called Saul. I found something, I said. What is it, Clyde? A diary. Evidence of intent to harm, poisoning Saul. She was going to drug me to get me committed. Good Lord, Saul breathed. Do you still have it? I burned it, I said. Clyde. That is evidence. I don't need it for court, Saul, I said. I have enough for court. I needed it for me. I needed to know that I didn't make a mistake. I needed to know that saving my son meant destroying his marriage. And I sleep just fine, I said. All right, Saul said. Well, since we are talking updates, I got a call from the consulate. They are being deported. Already. The hotel pressed charges, but the authorities decided it wasn't worth the paperwork to keep them. They are indigent. They have no assets to seize, so they are kicking them out. They are putting them on a plane tomorrow, one way, straight to JFK. Who paid for the tickets? I asked. The State Department gave them a repatriation loan, Saul said. They will have to pay it back before they can ever get a passport again. But they are coming home, Clyde. Good, I said. Is Detective Miller ready? He is, Saul said. The warrant is active. As soon as they step off the jet bridge, customs will flag them. Miller will be waiting at baggage claim. Perfect. Clyde, Saul said, his voice softening. You don't have to be there. You can let the police handle it. I know, I said, but I started this, Saul. I need to see it finish. I hung up. Tomorrow. 30 days of hell were coming to an end. But for Tiffany, the real hell was just beginning. I looked around my freshly painted living room. It looked clean. It looked bright. I went to the garage. Beatrice was there, shining under the lights. I sat in the driver's seat. They are coming back, Beatrice, I said to the dashboard. But they aren't coming home. I thought about the diary, about the poison, about the nursing home. I felt a tear run down my cheek. Not for me. For the son I tried to raise. How did he get so lost? How did he let a woman like that into our lives? I realized then that I had been too quiet. I had lived my life in the shadows, hiding my success, thinking humility was the ultimate virtue. But my silence had left a vacuum, and Tiffany had filled it with noise and flash and greed. Never again. When Jamal came home, I would show him everything. I would open the books. I would show him the patents, the bonds, the land. I would show him what real power looked like. And I would teach him that you don't need to steal to be rich. You just need to build something that matters. But first, he had to pay his dues. I got out of the car. I turned off the lights in the garage. I went to bed. I needed my rest. Tomorrow was going to be a long day. $4,000. That was the exact amount I wired to the U.S. consulate in Dubai. It was not bail money. It was not a bribe. It was an administrative fee to expedite a deportation order. I did not pay it to save them. I paid it to bring them into range. I sat in the arrivals hall at JFK International Airport holding a cup of lukewarm coffee. My hands were steady. I was wearing my navy blue suit, the one I wore to funerals and court dates. It felt appropriate because today I was witnessing the death of my son's marriage and the burial of his delusions. The flight from Dubai had landed 40 minutes ago. It was a 13-hour flight. I imagined what that flight was like for them. No first-class pods, no champagne, just 2 middle seats in the back of economy right next to the lavatories, surrounded by crying babies and the smell of recirculated air. They were coming home not as conquering heroes, but as cargo. I watched the sliding glass doors of the international arrivals gate. People were streaming out, hugging their families, laughing, holding signs. It was a parade of joy. And then the mood shifted. I saw Detective Miller first. He was standing near the barrier, flanked by 2 uniformed Port Authority officers. He was not smiling. He looked like a man who was about to clock in for a hard shift. He saw me sitting on the bench and gave me a barely perceptible nod. Then the doors opened and they walked out. They looked like ghosts. Tiffany was wearing the same white linen suit she had left in 30 days ago, but it was now gray-stained and wrinkled. Her hair, the blonde extension she was so proud of, was matted and pulled back into a messy bun. Her face was gaunt, devoid of makeup, her skin sallow from a month of prison food and no sunlight. Jamal looked worse. He had lost 20 pounds. His beard was overgrown and patchy. He walked with a stoop, his eyes darting around nervously like a beaten dog expecting another kick. They were not carrying the designer luggage they left with. They were carrying 2 clear plastic bags issued by the consulate containing their personal effects. They stepped through the doors, and for a split second I saw relief on their faces. They were on American soil. They thought the nightmare was over. They thought they could just hail a cab, go home, and start the manipulation all over again. Tiffany spotted me first. Her eyes narrowed. She started to walk toward me, her mouth opening, probably to scream some obscenity or demand a ride. But she never made it to me. Detective Miller stepped into her path. He moved with the precision of a predator cutting off prey. Tiffany Washington, he said, his voice cutting through the noise of the terminal. She stopped. She looked at him confused. Yes. Ms. Washington, I am Detective Miller with the local precinct. You are under arrest. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she was going to faint. Arrest, she stammered. For what? I didn't do anything here. The Dubai thing was a misunderstanding. We paid the debt. We were deported. This has nothing to do with Dubai, Miller said, pulling a pair of steel handcuffs from his belt. This is for the state of New York. You are being charged with grand theft auto, first-degree forgery, identity theft, and elder abuse. Tiffany's eyes went wide. She looked at me. I was sitting 10 feet away sipping my coffee. I did not look away. I held her gaze. Clyde, she screamed. Clyde, tell them. Tell them you gave me the car. Tell them it was a gift. I stood up slowly. I walked over to where they were standing. The officers formed a semicircle around us, creating a pocket of silence in the busy terminal. I gave you nothing, Tiffany. I said, my voice low and hard. You stole it. You broke into my safe. You forged my name, and you used my credit to try and run away. Now you stop running. She lunged at me, but the officers were faster. They grabbed her arms and spun her around. Get off me, she shrieked. Jamal, do something. Tell them. Tell them your father is senile. Tell them he forgot. Jamal stood there frozen. He looked at his wife being manhandled by the police. He looked at me. Jamal Miller said, Step back, sir. Jamal stepped back. He did not fight. He did not argue. He just watched as the metal cuffs clicked around Tiffany's wrists. The sound was sharp and final. You have the right to remain silent, Miller recited. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You are making a mistake, Tiffany yelled, struggling against the officers. My father-in-law is crazy. He is abusive. He trapped us. Save it for the judge, Miller said. Take her away. The two uniformed officers marched her toward the exit. She was still screaming, turning her head to look back at us, her face a mask of pure hatred and terror. People were staring, some were filming with their phones. Finally, she got the audience she always wanted. Then it was just me, Jamal, and Detective Miller. Miller looked at Jamal. He held a piece of paper in his hand, another warrant. Mr. Jamal Washington, he said. Jamal flinched. He held out his wrists, resigning himself to his fate. I saw his hands shaking. He looked so defeated, so broken that for a moment I almost intervened. Almost. Miller looked at the paper. Then he looked at me. I gave a small, almost invisible shake of my head. Miller put the paper away. You are free to go, sir, Miller said. Jamal blinked. He looked at his empty wrists. What? Your father declined to press charges against you for the theft, Miller said. He stated that you were under duress and that you did not physically sign the title or open the fraudulent accounts. You are lucky, Mr. Washington. Very lucky. Jamal looked at me, his eyes filled with tears. Dad, he whispered. I thanked Detective Miller. He nodded, touched the brim of his hat, and walked away to follow the patrol car carrying Tiffany. We were alone in the middle of the crowd, father and son. But there was a canyon between us. Dad, Jamal said again, his voice cracking. Thank you. I didn't know if you would come. I didn't come to welcome you home, Jamal, I said. I came to make sure justice was served. But you saved me, Jamal said, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. You didn't let them arrest me. I didn't arrest you, I said, because I know you didn't drive the getaway car. You just sat in the passenger seat and enjoyed the ride. But don't mistake mercy for forgiveness, son. Jamal looked down at his plastic bag of belongings. Can we go home now? He asked. I am so tired, Dad. I just want a shower. I want to sleep in my own bed. I promise I will make this right. I will get a job. I will pay you back. Just take me home. I looked at him. This was the hardest part. The part that went against every instinct I had as a parent. The instinct to shelter, to protect, to comfort. But comfort was what got us here. Comfort was the poison. You don't have a home, Jamal, I said. He looked up, startled. What? I told you on the phone, I said. I changed the locks. I executed the reversion clause on the deed. The house is mine, and you are not welcome in it. But where am I supposed to go? I don't know, I said. You are 32 years old. You are a man. Figure it out. Dad, you can't leave me here. I have no money. I have no phone. I have nothing. You have your freedom, I said, which is more than your wife has right now. You have your health. And you have a choice. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a crumpled business card and a $20 bill. I handed them to him. "What is this?" he asked, looking at the card. "That is the address for a shelter downtown," I said. "It is clean. They have hot showers. And they have job placement services." "A shelter," Jamal whispered, horrified. "You want me to go to a homeless shelter?" "I want you to learn how to stand up," I said. "I want you to learn what it feels like to have nothing so you can appreciate what it means to have something. You spent your whole life leaning on me, leaning on Tiffany, leaning on the idea that you were entitled to a lifestyle you didn't earn." I stepped closer to him. I put my hand on his shoulder. It was thin and bony. "I love you, son," I said. "I love you enough to let you fall, because if I pick you up now, you will never learn to walk. Dad, please." "No," I said, stepping back. "No more begging, no more excuses. You are at zero, Jamal. This is rock bottom. Build something from it." I turned around and started walking toward the exit. "Dad," he called out. "Dad, don't leave me." I kept walking. My heart was breaking with every step. I wanted to turn around. I wanted to grab him, throw him in the truck, take him home, and feed him soup. But I knew that if I did that, I would be killing him. I would be killing the man he could become. I walked out of the terminal and into the parking garage. I got into my truck. I sat there for a moment, breathing hard, gripping the steering wheel. I watched the entrance through the rearview mirror. A few minutes later, Jamal walked out. He stood on the curb, clutching his plastic bag. He looked small. He looked lost. He looked around, hoping I was waiting, hoping it was a test. When he realized I wasn't there, he slumped against a concrete pillar and slid down to the ground. He put his head in his knees. I put the truck in gear. "Goodbye, son," I whispered. I drove away. I drove back to my silent house. I walked past the empty driveway. I went into the garage. I pulled the cover off the Shelby. I sat in the driver's seat. I didn't cry. I had no tears left. I just felt a heavy resolve. I had done the hard thing, the necessary thing. Now it was up to him. I went inside and made myself dinner. I ate it alone. That night I slept with the windows open. The air was cool. Around midnight my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "I am at the shelter. It smells like bleach. But I got a bed. Good night, Dad." I stared at the screen. He had gone. He had actually gone. He didn't call a friend. He didn't beg a stranger. He took the card and he went. It was a small step, a tiny microscopic step, but it was a step in the right direction. "Good night, son," I typed back. I turned off the phone. The first crack in the shell had appeared. The boy was breaking. Maybe the man was finally trying to get out. The county jail does not have a VIP entrance. It does not have a concierge or a valet service. It is a concrete box filled with people who thought they were smarter than the system. I parked my truck in the visitor lot between a rusted sedan and a van with a flat tire. I walked up the concrete path, feeling the weight of the moment. I was not here to gloat. I was not here to spike the football. I was here to look the devil in the eye one last time and make sure she knew exactly why she was in hell. The processing area smelled of floor wax and old sweat. I emptied my pockets into a plastic bin. Keys, wallet, the phone that held the evidence that would bury her. I walked through the metal detector. I waited for the heavy steel door to buzz open. I sat in the visitation booth. It was a small cubicle divided by a thick sheet of plexiglass. The glass was scratched and clouded, scarred by thousands of angry fists and wedding rings. I waited. 5 minutes later, the door on the other side opened. A guard let her in. If I hadn't known it was her, I might not have recognized the woman who sat down in the chair opposite me. Tiffany was wearing an orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. It bagged around her shoulders, making her look shrunken. Her hair was pulled back into a severe ponytail, and the dark roots were already showing a stark contrast to the expensive blonde dye job she had maintained so religiously. Her skin was pale and blotchy. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy. She looked at me, and for a second I saw a flash of pure hatred. But she blinked and it was gone, replaced instantly by a mask of tragic vulnerability. She slumped her shoulders. She let her lip tremble. She reached out and placed her hand on the glass palm open as if she were trying to touch me. "Clyde," she whispered. Her voice was cracked and hoarse. "Thank God you came. Thank God." I sat still. I kept my face blank. I was a submarine running silent. "Clyde, please," she said, tears beginning to spill down her cheeks. "You have to get me out of here. It is a nightmare. The women in here, they are animals. They threaten me. The food is inedible. I haven't slept in 3 days. Please, you have to drop the charges." I looked at her. I looked at the performance. It was good. If I didn't know better, I might have felt a twinge of pity. "Drop the charges," I said. My voice was calm, low, steady. "Yes," she nodded vigorously. "Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you gave me permission to sell the car. Tell them I am your daughter-in-law and we just had a communication error. If you drop the charges, they have to let me go. Clyde, please, I am family." "Family," I repeated. "Yes, family," she said. "I am Jamal's wife. I am the mother of your future grandchildren. You can't let me rot in here. Think about Jamal. He is devastated. He needs me." "Jamal is in a homeless shelter," I said. "He is sleeping on a cot surrounded by strangers because you spent his safety net on a handbag." She flinched but recovered quickly. I know, and I am so sorry. We made mistakes. I got carried away. I just wanted us to have a better life, Clyde. I wanted us to be successful so we could take care of you. Everything I did for the family. I wanted to build something for us. For you." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The guard had let me keep it after inspecting it. "For me?" I asked. "Yes, for you," she said, her eyes widening with earnestness. "I love you, Clyde. You are like a father to me." "I would never do anything to hurt you. I just made a bad financial decision. That is all. It is not a crime to make a mistake." I tapped the screen of my phone. I navigated to the voice memo app. I found the file. June 1st. "You love me," I said. "Of course I do," she sobbed. I pressed play. I turned the volume all the way up and held the phone to the speaker grate in the glass partition. The sound was tinny but crystal clear. It cut through the air of the visitation room like a knife. Tiffany's voice filled the booth. Arrogant, hateful, cold. "Found a place for Clyde, Shady Pines. It is a dump. Smells like bleach and urine. Perfect. It is cheap. Once we get back from Dubai, I am going to slip something into his tea, just enough to make him confused, disoriented. We will call the doctors, say he is having an episode. Get him committed. Once he is in the system, he is never coming out." I watched her face as the recording played. I watched the color drain out of her skin until she was as white as the paper she used to forge my name. I watched her eyes go wide, not with sorrow, but with the shock of being exposed. The recording continued. "We sell the house, liquidate the assets, and I am free. I am so sick of looking at him, sick of his old boots, sick of his smell." I pressed stop. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the silence of a tomb. Tiffany stared at the phone. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The mask had slipped. It was hanging by a thread. "You were going to poison me," I said. She shook her head frantically. No, that is taken out of context. I was just venting. I was stressed. I didn't mean it. You bought the poison, Tiffany. I lied. I found the receipt. I didn't find a receipt. But I knew how to bluff. And I knew a guilty conscience hears accusations that aren't even spoken." Her eyes darted around the room, looking for an exit, looking for a lie, looking for anything to grab onto. "It was just a joke," she stammered. "A bad joke. Clyde, you know me. I wouldn't hurt a fly. You sold my wife's car," I said. "You stole my identity. You planned to have me committed to a state facility where I would die alone and confused. And you planned to drug me to make it happen. That is not a joke, Tiffany. That is malice. That is evil. Clyde, please." "No," I said. I leaned forward until my forehead was almost touching the glass. I looked deep into her eyes. "You didn't sell a car, Tiffany. You sold your future." She froze. "You signed a piece of paper," I said. "You signed my name. And in that moment, you signed away the next 5 to 10 years of your life. Grand theft auto, first-degree forgery, identity theft, elder abuse with intent to cause bodily harm. The prosecutor is looking at the recording as evidence of conspiracy." 10 years, she whispered. "At least," I said. "And when you get out, you will be 40 years old. You will have a felony record. You will have no money, no husband, because I am making sure Jamal divorces you before the ink is dry on your plea deal. And you will have no followers. The world will know you as the woman who tried to kill her father-in-law for a vacation." She stared at me. And then slowly the transformation happened. The tears stopped. The trembling lips stilled. Her face hardened. The lines around her mouth deepened. The eyes that had been begging for mercy turned into slits of pure venom. The monster came out. "You old son of a bitch," she hissed. I sat back. "There she is," I said. "There is the real Tiffany. You think you are so smart," she spat, slamming her hand against the glass again. "You think you won. You are nothing but a miserable old man hoarding money you don't know how to spend. You should have died. You should have died years ago and left that money to us. We deserved it. We are young. We are alive." "You are just taking up space," I smiled. It was a genuine smile, because she had just given me the final confirmation. I wasn't punishing a mistake. I was neutralizing a threat. "I earned that space, Tiffany," I said. "I built every inch of it, and I am going to keep occupying it for a long, long time." "You will rot," she screamed. "You will die alone in that big empty house, and nobody will find you for weeks. Jamal hates you. He will never forgive you for this." "Jamal is learning," I said. "He is learning what it means to be a man, and part of being a man is knowing when to cut out the cancer." I stood up. I put the phone back in my pocket. "Enjoy Shady Pines," I said, "or wherever the state sends you. I hear the food is terrible." I turned my back on her. She screamed. She pounded on the glass. She cursed my name, my wife, my ancestors. She threw every vile word she knew at my back. I walked out of the booth. I walked past the guard who was looking at the glass partition with a bored expression. "She is done," I said to him. He nodded and moved to retrieve her. I walked out of the jail and into the sunlight. The air smelled fresh. It smelled like freedom. I got into my truck. I sat there for a moment, letting the adrenaline fade. It was over. The threat was gone. She was locked away in a cage of her own making. But there was still one piece left on the board. One piece that needed to be moved. Jamal. He was out there somewhere. In the shelter. In the real world. I started the engine. I had one more stop to make. Not today, but soon. I needed to see if the seed I had planted was starting to grow. I drove home. I drove past the park where I had almost called the police days ago. I felt like a different man than the one who sat on that bench. That man was a victim. That man was afraid. This man was a survivor. I pulled into my driveway. The house looked strong, solid. I went inside. I walked to the kitchen. I opened the fridge. It was empty. I needed to go grocery shopping. Normal things, mundane things. I realized I was hungry. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. I made a list. Eggs, milk, bread, coffee. Life goes on. I put the list in my pocket. I thought about Tiffany in her cell. She would be pacing, she would be plotting. But she was powerless. Her claws had been pulled. I thought about the recording. I should probably delete it now that the police had a copy. But I didn't. I kept it. A reminder. A reminder that the people closest to you can be the most dangerous. And a reminder that silence is not always weakness. Sometimes silence is just the sound of a trap waiting to be sprung. I grabbed my keys. I went back out to the truck. I was going to the grocery store, and then I was going to visit my wife. I drove to the cemetery. It was on a hill overlooking the city. I parked the truck and walked up the path to Beatrice's grave. The grass was green, the stone was clean. I stood there for a long time. "I saved the car, Bea," I whispered. "And I saved the boy. At least I think I did." The wind blew through the trees. It sounded like a sigh. I touched the cold stone. "I miss you," I said. I stayed until the sun went down, then I went home. I was alone. But I wasn't lonely. I had my house, I had my car, I had my dignity, and I had a son who was currently learning the value of $1 the hard way. It was enough. For now, it was enough. It was raining. A hard, cold rain that hammered against the roof and ran down the gutters in sheets. It was the kind of rain that washes the oil off the streets and makes the city look gray and unforgiving. I was sitting in the living room reading a book, but I wasn't really reading. I was listening. I knew he would come. The shelter has a 3-night limit for new arrivals before they have to move on or join a program. Tonight was the 3rd night. I saw the headlights first. A taxi slowed down in front of the house and then sped away. It didn't stop. Jamal didn't have money for a taxi. He was walking. 10 minutes later, I saw him. He was standing at the front gate, the gate I had installed 2 days ago. It was 6 feet of wrought iron with an electronic lock. He was soaking wet. He wasn't wearing a coat, just a thin hoodie that clung to his frame. He looked thinner than I remembered, even though it had only been a few days. The shelter diet isn't exactly steak and lobster. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his old key. I watched him try to fit it into the lock. He tried once, twice. He jiggled it, he pushed it. Then he realized. The lock was new. The key was useless. He looked up at the house. The lights were on. He knew I was there. "Dad!" he screamed over the sound of the rain. "Dad, let me in. It is freezing." I stood up. I walked to the hallway closet. I picked up the plastic bag I had prepared. It contained 3 pairs of work pants, 3 work shirts, a pair of steel toe boots, and a rain poncho. Basic. Functional. No logos, no designer labels. I walked to the front door. I opened it and stepped out onto the porch. I stayed under the overhang where it was dry. Jamal was 20 feet away, standing on the sidewalk, gripping the bars of the gate. When he saw me, his face crumpled. "Dad, please, open the gate. I have nowhere to go. I used the last of the money you gave me for food. I am hungry, Dad. I am cold." I walked down the path. I didn't rush. I didn't run to save him. I walked with the slow, steady gait of a man who has made up his mind. I stopped 3 feet from the gate. The rain was hitting me now, but I didn't feel it. "You can't come in, Jamal," I said. My voice was low, but it cut through the storm. "What do you mean I can't come in? This is my house. You put it in my name." "I took it back," I said. "I told you." "The deed reverted. You broke the covenant. Dad, stop this." "I learned my lesson." "Okay. Tiffany is gone. She is in jail. I am alone. I have nothing. Isn't that enough punishment? Just let me come home. I will sleep in the basement. I don't care." "No," I said. I reached through the bars and dropped the plastic bag on the wet pavement. It made a heavy, wet sound. "Here," I said. "Dry clothes, work boots." Jamal looked at the bag like it was a snake. "I don't want clothes, Dad. I want to come inside. I want to take a shower." "You want comfort," I said. "You want the easy way out. You want to go back to being the boy who hid behind his wife. That boy is dead, Jamal. You have to be a man now, and men don't beg at gates." I pulled a folded piece of paper from my pocket. I held it out through the bars. "Take it," I said. He hesitated, then reached out with a trembling hand and took the paper. It was wet instantly. "What is this?" he asked. "It is an address," I said. "It is Sal's auto shop. You know Sal. He buys cars. He also fixes them." So Jamal asked, confused. So I said, "I spoke to him this morning. He is willing to take you on. Not as a manager, not as a partner. As an apprentice. You start at the bottom. Sweeping floors, cleaning parts, changing oil, minimum wage, $15 an hour." Jamal stared at me. "You want me to be a mechanic?" "I want you to be useful," I said. "I want you to learn how to work with your hands. I want you to know what it feels like to come home tired because you built something, not because you spent all day spending someone else's money. $15 an hour, Dad. I can't live on that. Millions of people do," I said. "You will figure it out. You will find a room. You will take the bus. You will budget. Dad, please. Sal is expecting you tomorrow morning at 6, I said. Don't be late. He fires people who are late." Jamal dropped the hand holding the paper. He looked at the house behind me, the warm yellow light spilling from the windows. "Just for tonight, Dad. Just one night. Let me sleep on the couch. I will leave in the morning." I shook my head. "If I let you in tonight, you will never leave," I said. "You will find a reason to stay. You will get comfortable, and the rot will start again. You need to stay out in the cold, Jamal. You need to remember this feeling. You need to hate this feeling so much that you never let yourself get here again." "But it is my house," he whispered. "I grew up here." "It is not your house," I said. "And it is not my house either. Not anymore." He looked at me confused. "What?" "I donated it," I said. "What?" "I signed the papers yesterday," I said. "The deed has been transferred. This house now belongs to the Beatrice Washington Foundation. It is a charitable trust I set up in your mother's name." Jamal's mouth fell open. "You gave the house away." "I gave the ownership away," I said. "The trust owns the land. The trust owns the walls. I am just the caretaker. I live here as a tenant. My job is to maintain the property. And the bylaws of the trust are very specific: no unauthorized guests, no long-term boarders, and absolutely no one with a criminal record or a history of financial negligence against the founder. "You are lying," Jamal said, his voice rising. "You are making this up." "Am I?" I asked. I pulled out my phone. I opened the email from Saul Goldstein. I held the screen up to the bars. He squinted through the rain. He saw the legal letterhead. He saw the words, "Deed of Trust." He saw the name, Beatrice Washington Foundation. He saw that I had put a legal wall between him and his inheritance that was thicker than the iron gate he was holding. "You really did it," he whispered. "You really gave it all away, just to keep it from me." "I didn't give it away to keep it from you," I said. "I gave it away to save you. As long as you thought this house was your safety net, you were never going to fly. You were always going to look down. Now the net is gone. You have to look up." He let go of the bars. He fell to his knees on the wet sidewalk. He didn't care about the mud. He didn't care about the cold. He put his face in his hands and he sobbed. It wasn't the whining cry of a child who didn't get a toy. It was the deep, guttural sound of a man who realizes he has lost everything. I watched him. My heart was twisting in my chest like a wet rag. I wanted to open the gate. I wanted to pull him up. I wanted to tell him about the bonds in the safe. I wanted to tell him that the foundation was just a shell and that he could still earn his way back in. But I couldn't. Not yet. He needed to break. He needed to shatter so he could be put back together the right way. "I am sorry, son," I whispered. He looked up. His face was streaked with rain and tears. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw something different in his eyes. It wasn't anger, it wasn't entitlement, it was fear, and it was respect. He realized then that I wasn't just his old dad who fixed cars. I wasn't just the quiet man in the flannel shirt. I was a force of nature. I was a man who could move assets, create foundations, and lock down lives with a phone call. I was dangerous. He wiped his face. He looked at the bag of clothes on the ground. He looked at the paper with Sal's address. He reached out and picked up the bag. He stood up slowly. He was shivering violently. 6 a.m. He asked, his voice shaking. 6 a.m. I confirmed. "Ask for Sal. Tell him you are Clyde's boy. He will show you where the broom is." Jamal nodded. He didn't say anything else. He didn't beg. He didn't scream. He turned around and started walking down the street. He looked small in the rain. He looked like a refugee. But he was walking. He was putting one foot in front of the other. I watched him until he turned the corner and disappeared into the night. I stood there for a long time. The rain soaked my shirt. I felt the cold seep into my bones. I turned back to the house. I walked up the path and stepped onto the porch. I looked at the new lock on the door. It was solid, unbreakable. I went inside and closed the door. I locked it. I walked to the mantel and looked at the picture of Beatrice. "He is working, Beatrice," I said to the photo. "He is at the bottom. Now let's see if he can climb." I went to the kitchen and made a pot of coffee. I wasn't going to sleep tonight. I had a feeling that tomorrow was going to be the first day of the rest of my son's life, and I wanted to be awake for it. The next morning I drove by Sal's shop at 7. I parked across the street and watched. The bay doors were open. Inside I saw Sal talking to someone. It was Jamal. He was wearing the work clothes I gave him. He was holding a broom. He looked miserable. He looked tired, but he was sweeping. I watched him push the broom across the concrete floor. Push, pull, push, pull. I smiled. He had shown up. I put the truck in gear and drove away. I didn't want him to see me. I didn't want him to think I was checking up on him. He needed to think he was alone. He needed to think he was doing this for himself. But he wasn't alone. I was watching. I would always be watching. And the trust fund, the $3 million in bonds. It was safe. It was waiting. It was the finish line. But Jamal had to run the marathon first, and he had just taken the first step. 1 year, 365 days. That is how long it takes for the earth to go around the sun, and it is exactly how long it takes for a boy to start becoming a man if you take away his toys and hand him a wrench. I drove down the industrial strip where Sal's shop was located. The asphalt was cracked and the buildings were gray, but the sun was shining on the hood of my Shelby like it was blessing the metal. I wasn't driving my old Ford truck today. I wasn't wearing my flannel shirt or my stained work pants. I was wearing a charcoal gray bespoke suit that I had made in London 20 years ago. It still fit. I was wearing polished leather shoes. I had a gold watch on my wrist. Not the flashy kind Tiffany bought for Jamal, but a Patek Philippe I bought for myself when I sold my first patent. I looked like who I really was, a man of substance, a man of means. I pulled into the lot of Sal's auto repair. The sign was faded, but the parking lot was full. Sal did good work, and honest work pays. I parked the Shelby right in front of the bay doors. The engine idle was a low rumble, a heartbeat that shook the pavement. I killed the ignition. The silence that followed was heavy with expectation. I watched the bay. A young man walked out wiping his hands on a rag. He was wearing coveralls that were covered in oil and grease. His beard was trimmed close, but his face was smudged with dirt. He looked tired. He looked worn. It was Jamal. He stopped when he saw the car. He froze. He knew that car. He knew the sound of it. He knew the shine of it. Then he looked at the driver. I opened the door and stepped out. I adjusted my cuffs. I buttoned my jacket. I stood tall. Jamal's mouth dropped open. He had never seen me like this. In his mind, I was the guy in the basement, the guy who needed help, the guy who was fading away. He didn't know he was looking at the architect of his own salvation. "Dad," he said. His voice was rough. He swallowed hard. "Hello, son," I said. He walked toward me slowly, like he was approaching a wild animal. He looked at the suit. He looked at the shoes. He looked at the car. "You look incredible," he said. "I feel incredible," I said. "How are you, Jamal?" He looked down at his dirty hands. He tried to wipe them on his pants, but the grease was stubborn. "I am working, Dad," he said. "I am tired. My back hurts. My knuckles are bleeding. Sal is a hard boss. He doesn't let me sit down." "Good," I said. "Sitting down is for people who have finished the job. You are just starting." He looked at the car again. A look of pure longing crossed his face. Not the greedy longing he used to have when he looked at expensive things. This was different. It was respect. He was looking at a machine that had been cared for, loved, and preserved. "She looks beautiful," he whispered. "It is your mother's birthday today," I said. "I know," Jamal said. "I was going to visit the grave after my shift. I bought flowers. Cheap ones. But they are nice." He bought flowers. With his own money. Money he earned sweating over a hot engine. "That is good, son," I said. "Beatrice would like that." I leaned against the fender of the car. I crossed my arms. "I have some news," I said. Jamal looked up worried. "Is it Tiffany? Did she get out?" "No," I said. "Tiffany is exactly where she belongs. She is serving her time. And from what I hear, she is not having a good time. The state penitentiary is not the Burj Al Arab." Jamal shuddered. "I filed the divorce papers, Dad, like you said. It is over." "I know," I said. "That is not the news." I patted the hood of the Shelby. "I am selling the car," I said. Jamal's eyes went wide. He stepped forward, his hand reaching out instinctively as if to stop me. "What?" "No." "Dad, you can't." "I can," I said. "I have an offer. A very good offer. But it is Mom's car." Jamal pleaded. "It is Beatrice. You love this car. You saved this car. You almost destroyed my life to get this car back. Why would you sell it now?" "Because it is time," I said. "A car is just a car, son. It is metal and rubber. The memory of your mother isn't in the engine block. It is in my head. It is in my heart. And keeping a $250,000 machine under a tarp while the world keeps turning. That is vanity. But who are you selling it to?" Jamal asked, his voice desperate. "Please don't say a dealer. Please don't say a stranger." "I am selling it to the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles," I said. "They have been asking for it for years. It is a rare spec. They want to put it on display. They want to tell its story." "A museum," Jamal repeated. "Yes. They are paying $300,000. $300,000. Jamal went pale. He looked at the car like it was made of solid gold. He thought about the $80,000 Tiffany had sold it for. He thought about how close he had come to throwing away a fortune. That is a lot of money, Dad." "It is," I said. "And you know what I am going to do with it." Jamal shook his head. "You are going to travel. You are going to retire for real." "No," I said. "I am going to open a trust fund." Jamal looked down. "Good for you, Dad. You deserve it." "It is not for me," I said. He looked up. "It is for you." The world stopped spinning for a second. The noise of the shop behind us faded away. Jamal stared at me, his eyes wide and wet. "For me," he whispered. "After everything I did." "Because of everything you are doing," I corrected. I walked over to him. I didn't care about the grease on his coveralls. I put my hand on his shoulder. The fabric was rough. His shoulder felt solid. There was muscle there now. "I have been watching you, Jamal," I said. "I have been watching you for a year. I have seen you show up at 6 every morning. I have seen you take the bus. I have seen you eat sandwiches for lunch instead of sushi. I have seen you work." I stepped back. $300,000, I said. "That is seed money. That is startup capital. That is enough to open your own shop, enough to buy a house, enough to start a life." Jamal started to cry. He didn't sob like he did at the gate a year ago. These were silent tears, tears of gratitude, tears of a man who has been given a second chance. "Dad, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet," I said, raising a finger. "Because there is a catch." Jamal wiped his face. He nodded. "Okay, what is the catch?" "You don't get a dime today," I said. "You don't get a dime tomorrow." I looked him dead in the eye. "You get it in 5 years." 5 years, Jamal repeated. 5 years, I said. "You have to stay here. You have to finish your apprenticeship with Sal. You have to become a master mechanic. You have to learn how to run a business, not just how to fix a radiator. You have to prove to me, and more importantly to yourself, that you can stick with something when it gets hard." I pulled a document from the inside pocket of my jacket. It was a copy of the agreement. "This money goes into an escrow account," I said. "It will grow. It will invest. In 5 years it might be 400,000. But you only get the key if you stay the course. If you quit, if you slide back, if you try to take a shortcut, the money goes to the Navy Veterans Relief Fund." Jamal looked at the paper. He looked at me. He didn't argue. He didn't complain. He didn't ask for an advance. He stood up straighter. He squared his shoulders. "I can do that," he said. "I know you can," I said. "That is why I am doing it." He looked at the car one last time. Can I sit in it? Just for a minute, before it goes?" I smiled. "Here." I tossed him the keys. He caught them. He walked over to the driver's side. He opened the door. He sat down in the leather bucket seat. He put his hands on the wood-rimmed steering wheel. He closed his eyes. He breathed in the smell of the car. He looked like me. For the first time in his life, he looked like my son. He got out of the car. He handed me the keys. "She is a beauty, Dad. The museum is lucky to have her." I took the keys. "They are," I said. I got back into the car. I started the engine. "Get back to work, son," I said. "Sal is watching." Jamal smiled. It was a real smile. A tired, dirty, honest smile. "Yes, sir," he said. "Happy birthday to Mom." I put the car in gear. I drove away, leaving him there in the parking lot. I watched him in the rearview mirror. He stood there for a moment watching me go. Then he turned around and walked back into the shop. He picked up a wrench. He went back to work. I felt a lightness in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. The car was going, but the legacy was staying. I drove toward the highway. I was going to drive Beatrice one last time. I was going to take her down the coast. I was going to open her up and let her run, and then I was going to let her go. Because I didn't need the car anymore. I had the memories, and I had the future. My son was going to be okay. He was going to make it. Not because I gave him money, but because I gave him a reason to earn it. And that was worth more than any car in the world. I sat in the wicker chair on the back porch of my house looking out at the garden Beatrice had planted 20 years ago. The azaleas were in full bloom, exploding in shades of pink and white. The sun was warm on my face. The house was quiet behind me. For a long time, silence felt like loneliness. It felt like an absence. But today it felt like peace. It felt like order. I took a sip of my coffee. It was black and strong, just the way I like it. My phone was on the table next to me. It was silent. No frantic texts from Tiffany. No desperate calls from Jamal. No notifications from the bank about unauthorized charges. Just silence. I thought about my son. He was probably under a lift right now, oil dripping onto his face, wrestling with a rusted bolt. He was probably cursing. He was probably tired. But he was safe. And for the first time in his life, he was building something that no one could take away from him. He was building character. I had protected the house. I had protected the money. But more importantly, I had protected the memory of the woman who built this life with me. I didn't let them turn her legacy into a party trick or a plane ticket. I was alone, yes, but I wasn't empty. I stood up and walked to the garage. The spot where the Shelby used to sit was empty, but not for long. I pressed the button on the wall. The bay door rolled up, letting the sunlight pour onto the concrete. There she was, my new girl, a Ford GT40. It wasn't a classic like Beatrice's Shelby. It was a modern beast, carbon fiber, twin-turbo V6, 600 horsepower. It was a car that didn't look back. It only looked forward. I had bought it with the dividend check from my patent last week. I didn't hide it. I didn't cover it with a tarp. I wasn't hiding anymore. I opened the scissor door and slid into the cockpit. It fit me like a glove. I pushed the start button. The engine barked to life, a savage mechanical growl that vibrated through my chest. I backed out of the driveway. I watched the house recede in the rearview mirror. It was a good house, a strong house. It would be there when I got back. I drove toward the coast. I hit the Pacific Coast Highway and I let the car run. I pushed the pedal down and felt the G-force press me into the seat. The ocean was a blur of blue on my right. The cliffs were a blur of gold on my left. I wasn't a retired mechanic driving an old truck. I wasn't a victim of elder abuse. I wasn't a lonely widower. I was Clyde Washington. Millionaire, engineer, father. I was alive. And as the engine roared and the wind rushed over the sleek lines of the car, I realized that this was what freedom felt like. It didn't cost $80,000. It cost the courage to say no. I smiled. I shifted gears. And I drove into the sunset not because it was an ending, but because the view was just too damn good to miss. Legacy isn't about what you leave for your children in your bank account. It's about what you leave in their character. I spent years hiding my success, thinking humility would teach my son value. I was wrong. Sometimes you have to let the wolves expose themselves before you can save the sheep. Greed is a blinding light that hides the cliff's edge. My daughter-in-law chased the illusion of gold in the desert and lost the diamond she had at home. Never underestimate the quiet ones. We didn't survive this long by being foolish. We survived by knowing exactly when to stop being silent. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about how I handle business, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments if you would have given Jamal a second chance or if you would have left him at the gate. I read every single one. Until next time, stay sharp and keep your eyes on the road.